Chapter 2807, 2807 Leaving. Chapter 2807, 2807 Leaving. 2807 Leaving. Ling Han started to make preparations and drew all the people of Ling City into the celestial guest residence one by one. Having gone through hardships together, Ling Han fully trusted the people who had stayed behind. Of course, it was impossible for him to abandon and leave them to their own devices. Now that he had a lot of divine metal on hand, he was completely able to create more celestial guest residences. He even had a feeling that when the powers of dimensions in his body developed to a certain level, he would even be able to produce spiritual herbs and divine metals by himself. Of course, he was still a very long way from this step. Perhaps he had to wait until he advanced to the 7th tier. This time, Ling Han had another purpose for leaving: to acquire at least 2 pieces of devouring metal. Divine metal was worthless to him now, but if he wanted to forge a heavenly venerate tool, he could only do it by using devouring metal. Although the flaming frost realm was huge, there was also a large number of heavenly venerates. Therefore, it was really too difficult to obtain devouring metal. Hence, looking for it in other dimensions ought to reap some harvest. After putting everyone into the spatial celestial tool, Ling Han breathed a sigh of relief. Now, he didn't care whoever might come looking for him. As long as he could traverse the dimensions, could he be stopped even by a 7th tier? Ling Han had no idea, because he had never met the 7th tier heavenly venerate before, so he was unaware of the kind of strength that was actually attained by a 7th tier. Ling Han. Zhang Kailuan came to challenge him again. Ling Han leapt out of the city. He was going to have a final battle with Zhang Kailuan, and then he would leave. The Genesis world was so big that he could roam about freely as he wished. "Kindly leave this battle to me." A faint voice was heard as a young man in black robes suddenly appeared. When Zhang Kailuan saw him, he couldn't help his eyes narrowing slightly. Lord Saintly Origin. This was a 4th tier heavenly venerate. Was he intending to challenge Ling Han as well? The heavenly venerate Saintly Origin looked at Ling Han. "Are you going to hand over the heavenly venerable seal yourself, or do I have to refine you to get it?" The heavenly venerable seals could be passed on, but not taught to another. He could choose to part with it by severing a part of his consciousness, and in order to endure the weight of the heavenly venerable seal, it could only be done once. Once severed, he would no longer possess it. Furthermore, this would cause huge damage to himself. It would be impossible to do so if he was not a top-grade elite. For example, Huang could part with the heavenly venerable seal and passed it on to Black Donkey naturally because Huang had already advanced to the 6th tier, with a consciousness so vast that he could afford to lose a portion of it. But Ling Han was only a 1st tier, so he absolutely couldn't afford to lose it. But refining it would be even more cruel, as one's life would be lost in the process. Ling Han smiled faintly. "Do I know you?" "Probably not." The heavenly venerate Saintly Origin shook his head with a smile. "Have I offended you before?" Ling Han asked again. Heavenly venerate Saintly Origin still shook his head. "Prior to this, we have never met. Did I kill your son, grandson, and his descendants?" Ling Han asked for the 3rd time. Heavenly venerate Saintly Origin seemed to have a surprisingly good temperament. He continued to shake his head. "No. Then you just casually barge into my house to ask me for the heavenly venerable seal? Did I owe you anything?" Ling Han suddenly exploded angrily. "You're so old. So have you wasted all your life to be so stupid?" The smile on the heavenly venerate Saintly Origin's face immediately froze. He had been observing Ling Han. From the details of the other party's expression, he was sure that Ling Han didn't have any trump card left. He didn't expect Ling Han to suddenly explode with anger and directly shower him with insults. This brat. He stared at Ling Han fiercely, his killing intent already rising. "Brother Saintly Origin, how about leaving this battle to me?" With a long laugh, Zhuang Ferrue appeared with a look of arrogance on his face. Although he addressed Saintly Origin as a brother, he actually had no respect for him. Although he had just advanced to the 4th tier, he had cultivated too powerfully when he had been a 1st tier, and his battle prowess was already at the peak of 4th tier, so he was absolutely not afraid of the heavenly venerate's saintly origin. Zhang Kailuan was taken aback again. Of course he recognized Zhuang Ferrue. Back then, they could just barely be considered as belonging to the same generation. Hadn't this guy already died a long time ago? Why did he suddenly pop up? Furthermore, how had he already advanced to the 4th tier? I would also like to join in the fun. Another elite appeared, also at the 4th tier. I am not willing to be left alone. The 4th heavenly venerate appeared, also another 4th tier. More and more heavenly venerates appeared. They were originally just observing from the surroundings, but now they all popped up. It couldn't be helped. If one was a step slower, Ling Han would be taken away by someone, and the heavenly venerable seal would be extracted from him. It would be too difficult to snatch the heavenly venerable seal from an elite of the same level. Except for a supreme freak like Zhuang Ferrue, most of the heavenly venerates' battle prowess at the same level was similar. It would just depend on who could obtain more and stronger heavenly venerable seals. Zhang Kailuan gritted his teeth. What was going on? Not only 4th tier, but there were also many 3rd tier heavenly venerates who came. However, they were not qualified to come close, so they could only wait for an opportunity in the distance. What if Ling Han was severely wounded and sent flying to them? Ling Han saw Jiwu heavenly venerate, and a murderous look flashed in his eyes. However, it was too difficult for him to break out of the siege created by 4th tier heavenly venerates and kill a 3rd tier heavenly venerate. Unless he had advanced to the 2nd tier. Oh well, it wasn't necessary to rush to kill someone. Ling Han looked at the 4th tier heavenly venerates surrounding him. He couldn't handle even one, let alone a dozen or so of them. However, he still had a trump card up his sleeve, so naturally he was completely unfazed and said, "There's so many of you, being 4th tier heavenly venerates, to bully me who's alone how very impressive." These words were full of sarcasm, which made those 4th tier heavenly venerates feel embarrassed, as seen on their facial expressions. It had to be known that Ling Han was only a 1st tier. Even one 4th tier would have been too much, not to mention that there were so many 4th tiers being dispatched. They couldn't refute his words. There's no point talking rubbish to a junior. Take him down first and then talk later. A 4th tier heavenly venerate was heard saying. Ling Han stared at him, nodded, and said, "I will remember you, and will definitely pay you a visit in the future." The 4th tier heavenly venerate couldn't help his expression turning dark. Ling Han actually dared to threaten him. Did he think he would be able to narrowly escape this time? "I am White Flame. You would do well to remember it," he said lightly. "Take him down first." All the heavenly venerates reached a consensus. Once they took Ling Han down, they would decide who could get this heavenly venerable seal. Otherwise, what was the point in them fighting and killing each other over it? Good. The others also agreed. Zhang Kailuan retreated into the distance. This kind of battle was beyond his control. A thought flashed in his mind, and he immediately ran towards the city. Ling Han was doomed, so he wanted to take Huang back to his master. Junior sister. Junior sister. He entered the city, but immediately found that there was no one in the city. It was empty, and there wasn't even a single person there. This was an empty city. Zhang Kailuan immediately flew out of the city and said loudly, "Ling Han, where have you hidden my junior sister?" Previously, Ling Han had used certain means to deceive the world, making people think that the city was still the same as before. The expressions of the heavenly venerates changed. With all of them being sly old foxes, they immediately thought of many things. Hurry up and take down this brat. They acted immediately, not giving Ling Han a chance to use any tricks. Ling Han showed a smile. "Everyone, I have taken note of all your voice and features. I hope that all of you live a long, healthy life until I go to find you." Xiao, he disappeared in a flash. Where did he go? All the heavenly venerates were amazed and shocked because they had sealed off the space around them, and it was supposed to be absolutely impossible for Ling Han to instantly teleport himself away. But where did he go? Chapter 2808. 2808 Enemy in the Void. Chapter 2808. 2808 Enemy in the Void. 2808 Enemy in the Void. These heavenly venerates couldn't stop Ling Han, because Ling Han wasn't teleporting through space, but rather traversing between dimensions. The level involved was higher by who knew how many times. This brat is traversing between dimensions. Some heavenly venerates immediately came to a realization. After him, as long as one was a third-tier heavenly venerate, one would be able to traverse between dimensions, let alone these fourth tiers. One after another, they tore rips into space and entered the void. However, the void was the other side of Genesis world, which was full of chaos and endless darkness. Even if a fourth-tier heavenly venerate was to enter here, he would be groping in the dark and fall into primal chaos. Here, no one could see far and could get lost for eternity. Unless there were dimension coordinates to function as a guide, like a lighthouse. But how did Ling Han disappear? Walking in such darkness, it was impossible to walk in a straight line. One would be circling around within a small space, as if being endlessly lost. Logically speaking, everyone would be the same. Hence, Ling Han was naturally no exception, but where did he go? Unless he has dimension coordinates, someone suddenly exclaimed. All of a sudden, all the heavenly venerates fell into silence. This ought to be the only reasonable explanation, but their minds were still full of doubts. Even if he had dimension coordinates, how did Ling Han disappear so quickly? This was naturally because there were countless powers of dimension within Ling Han's body. It was as if he was a mini Genesis world, and naturally his speed of transmigrating dimensions was shockingly fast, so much so that even a seventh-tier heavenly venerate could only stare blankly. Ling Han traversed through space. He intended to come out in a high-level dimension. This dimension was high-level, so the probability of finding devouring metal would be much higher. About a year later, Ling Han was about to emerge in a high-level dimension when he suddenly felt a strong palpitation in his heart. Dangerous, extremely dangerous. Without hesitation, he immediately tore a rip into space and escaped from the void. He fell out in an unknown place. All he could see was that this place was surrounded by a sea of boiling flames, flames so fierce that Ling Han felt slightly painful from being scorched. But this wasn't the biggest Crisisa black whip could be seen lashing out from the void. Not a black whip, but rather one of Hysteria's tentacles. Ling Han felt greatly alarmed, while the hair all over his body stood on ends. He wasn't a seventh-tier heavenly venerate who could compete with Hysteria. It was said that even the seventh-tier heavenly venerates had to join forces with others to fight against Hysteria, and moreover had to rely on the power of the flaming frost realm. How could a first-tier heavenly venerate fight against it? Ling Han hastily stretched out, and schwa, the void was instantly smoothed out with a wave of his hand. Boom. Even so, Ling Han still felt the space tremble, and as a wave of energy passed by, his face turned pale involuntarily, and he felt so uncomfortable that he wanted to vomit blood. Hysteria was too strong. A shock wave across space could make Ling Han, one who possessed the strength of a third tier, want to vomit blood. It was truly horrifying. Ling Han gasped. Back then, Hysteria had precisely followed the lighthouse of the celestial realm to locate it. Fortunately, Huang had been there at the time. Otherwise, had Hysteria's tentacles penetrated into the dimension, the damage caused would have been extremely terrifying. The void was Hysteria's territory. Ling Han could freely travel between dimensions. That was because he had infinite powers of dimensions within his body, and thus could go to any dimension that he chose. Hysteria did not have such a great ability, but it was a dimension itself, and would never lose its way in the void. It would only at most be unable to find the exit. It would seem that traversing between dimensions was also dangerous because therein lay the most terrifying existence in the world, Hysteria. Ling Han sat within the sea of flames, took a few breaths, and then observed the surrounding environment. Where was this place? He strode out of the area engulfed by the sea of fire, which took him more than a year. This place was covered only by a sea of fire and had nothing else. Even if a second-tier heavenly venerate was to come here, it would also be unbearable for him. This could be regarded as a danger zone of the world. What was burning wasn't regulations, but rather the power of dimension, which had erupted in the form of fire. Whether it was fire, ice, lightning, or other regulations, it was actually a form of energy, which was what Wally had always emphasized. Only then did Xinghai walk into the high-level dimension that he wanted to go to, which was called Intense Blaze Realm. Among the high-level dimensions, it was ranked 19th, which was still considered very high. He released all the women, and as they went sightseeing, he searched for devouring metal. Why did he choose this dimension? It was because this dimension had produced the least number of heavenly venerates among all the high-level dimensions. Therefore, the probability of there being devouring metal would be higher compared to other dimensions. Everyone kept looking for it and cultivated as they did so. After all, this was a high-level dimension with an abundance of spiritual chi. Year after year, they continued to search, and after almost 70,000 years, they finally found a piece of devouring metal. However, Xinghai wasn't satisfied, as currently there was also Huang besides the Empress. As for the large black dog, the Rain Emperor, and others, Xinghai wouldn't worry about them. He couldn't be the one to take care of everything, after all. Xinghai took out a large amount of godly metal to be consumed by the devouring metal. With his current wealth and power, it was a trivial matter for devouring metal to advance to the next level, and it only took a few thousand years. This sword made of devouring metal was successfully transformed into a heavenly venerate tool. This sword was given to the Empress who couldn't compete, who asked the Empress to bring up her precious daughter, suppressing Huang to the point that she had lost all notion of throwing a tantrum. Huang could only ask Xinghai to work harder so that she could also give birth to a healthy baby boy as soon as possible. However, they had searched here for more than 70,000 years, but it was to no avail, so they moved on to the next dimension. This time, Xinghai didn't directly traverse between dimensions. He had decided that unless he had no other alternative, he would obediently journey through the passageway of the two realms. After spending more than 600,000 years in this dimension, they finally found another piece of devouring metal. Huang happily took it and nurtured it herself. They all had a clear goal before, but now that they had got two supreme precious tools, they suddenly became idle. What are we going to do now? All the women looked at Xinghai. Xinghai thought for a while and said, "Let's go back to the flaming frost realm and take a look there. After leaving for so long, there's no telling what changes have happened in that place. Moreover, we wanted to obtain more heavenly venerable seals, which also necessitates us going back there." All the women nodded. They knew that Xinghai could traverse through space, so they didn't have to worry about being attacked by elites. Xinghai made arrangements for his parents and others to live in this dimension. He would come to bring them back once he resolved his issues in the flaming frost realm. Thousands of years later, Xinghai and the women walked through the dimensions and returned to the flaming frost realm. Xinghai was very low-key. Now that there wasn't any threat of hysteria, all the heavenly venerates entered into a rhythm of internal strife. It couldn't be helped, as the heavenly venerates also had selfish motives. Some wanted to compete for the cultivation resources for their descendants, while some would plunder heavenly venerable seals. Originally, the presence of hysteria had been a pressure that forced the great heavenly venerates to unite, but now that the pressure had disappeared, the will of the people was naturally dispersed. Xinghai first went to the world's paramount martial academy. He hadn't seen his daughter for a long time and missed her very much. However, after he had come to the martial academy, he realized that his devotion had come to naught as she had gone out for training. Isn't this little Han? Behind him, the voice of the large black dog rang out. Chapter 2809, 2809A Frightening Deduction. Chapter 2809, 2809A Frightening Deduction. 2809A Frightening Deduction. Go and find the black donkey and have him ask Senior Huang, Xinghai said. There was an unknown number of high-level, heavenly venerates eyeing Xinghai now, so revealing himself publicly would be too dangerous. The large black dog nodded and was just about to turn and leave when he immediately stopped again and exclaimed, "That's right. Grandpa Dog almost forgot about the real business. What real business? Lord Yuan Shang has discovered the tomb of an ancient heavenly venerate from historical records. It is extremely possible that there is a heavenly venerable seal within. The large black dog revealed a shocking piece of news. Ling Han's eyes brightened. Are you sure that is reliable? Celestial kings were already immortal. What more heavenly venerates? How would they die? The large black dog nodded. That was a 5th-tier heavenly venerate. A great problem came up when he had been attempting to break through to the 6th tier, and that was what caused his death. There are a great many historical records that can verify this. But this heavenly venerate did not have any children or disciples, so no one knew where he was buried. That is until the energy storm that has recently risen. It has even affected various places in the flaming frost realm, and only then has his burial spot finally seen the light of day again. Ling Han thought for a moment. Going by that theory, we wouldn't be the only ones that would be eyeing this tomb, then? There should be quite a number. The large black dog nodded. Thus, Lord Yuan Shang wanted to find help. Originally, Grandpa Dog had wanted to find your son. However, since you are back now, Grandpa Dog is inviting you directly. Sure, Ling Han agreed decisively. You go and find the black donkey first. The large black dog left immediately and returned not many days later. Ling Han had only talked about this possibility to the large black donkey and told him to pass on the message to Zhou Heng. As for whether Zhou Heng accepted it or otherwise, that would definitely not be known for the moment. Ling Han beckoned his son over as well. Ling Jianxue was presently in the martial academy. He wanted to be a good teacher and frequently taught disciples there. The group set out, meeting up with the karmic life heavenly venerable, and they set out towards the tomb of that ancient heavenly venerate. As Ling Han traveled, he couldn't help but feel rueful. This energy storm had really had tremendous effects on the flaming frost realm. A considerable number of inconceivable terrain shapes and forms had appeared here. There were mountains that were hanging upside down and oceans in the skies, completely rebelling against logic. Among their group, there were Ling Han, the Empress, Ling Jianxue, Huang, the karmic life heavenly venerable, and the large black dog, which counted for 6 heavenly venerates. The karmic life heavenly venerable had just advanced to the 2nd tier. Hence, they had the battle prowess of 1 3rd-tier heavenly venerate and 3 2nd-tier heavenly venerates, which was already considered an acceptably strong team. But considering that there would definitely be 4th-tier heavenly venerates making their move, and even 5th-tier heavenly venerate could appear, they did not dare to be too careless. They all deliberately kept a low profile, advancing towards their destination. Several months later, they arrived. Originally, it would not have taken so much time at all. However, because of the impact caused by the energy storm, the space in the flaming frost realm was completely chaotic. If one just rashly advanced in a single direction, he would very likely realize that he was heading in the wrong direction altogether. After every section of their journey, they would have to stop to check if they were still advancing in the right direction. Hence, this very much affected the efficiency of their journey, causing what had originally been a journey of several days to take as long as several months. This kind of effect would definitely disappear slowly, but it might take several hundreds of millions, or even tens of billions of years. Originally, this had been a massive plateau, but now it had become a sea of flames. Flames surged into the skies, but if one flew into the sky, they would be able to see that the other side of the ocean of flames was a boundless territory of ice, with snow flying for thousands of kilometers, filled with icy coldness. Where the sea of fire and the ice plain met, there was a colossal gulf that looked like a massive mouth. This gulf was still continuously widening, as if a great mouth was opening, striking chills into everyone who saw it. However, there was a brilliant light that was soaring from within the gulf, exuding an incredibly majestic air. This was definitely of the heavenly venerable tier. Chapter 2810, 2810 Mending the 8th Seal. Chapter 2810, 2810 Mending the 8th Seal. 2810 Mending the 8th Seal. Let's go. They headed out towards that wide gulf. Ling Han and the Empress had altered their appearance, and made some slight changes to their auras. At present, Ling Han was too big a target, and one only had to spot the Empress, and they would be able to guess that the other person had to be Ling Han. Thus, they could only make some alterations to their appearance and auras to avoid attracting unnecessary trouble. What was everyone here for? What else could it be but a heavenly venerable seal? Ling Han himself had one. The group entered into the gulf, and all of them channeled their colossal power into defense to protect themselves against the terrible environmental conditions here. The environment here was really terrible. On one side, there were surging flames, and on the other, there was bone-chilling ice. Two completely opposite powers taking effect on one at the same time would be an indescribable torture, so they had to use their own power to resist it. Otherwise, one side of their body would be burned to nothing, while the other side would be frozen into an icicle. Heavenly Venerable tier power could only be resisted by heavenly venerates. Thankfully, everyone was not very weak, and it was not difficult for them to deal with this kind of pressure. However, if a battle began here, there would definitely not even be many first-tier heavenly venerates that could unleash more than 50% of their usual battle prowess. This gulf was very big and deep. Everyone descended for around an hour before they could finally see the ground level. Here, the extremely terrible environment finally turned better, but an expansive, grand aura was endlessly spreading out, and one would involuntarily feel reverent. Is it the aura of that heavenly venerate? He has already been dead for more than 100 epochs, but his aura is still here. A fifth-tier heavenly venerate has truly surpassed mortality and taken steps into immortality. Everyone felt rueful. It was still unknown where this heavenly venerate was actually buried, but this majestic aura was already so surging like an ocean that others could only gasp in amazement. This could just barely be considered a plain, but it was not very flat and smooth. There were multiple sharp rocks protruding out of the ground. Though they weren't placed very close together and were dark in color, they gave one a feeling of discomfort. Where do we go from here? Everyone was troubled. This was a plain, and they could go in any direction, but which direction was the correct one? Just any which direction then, Ling Han said. Could one be so casual when exploring the tomb of an ancient heavenly venerate? But when everyone thought about it, they did not have any clues. So what could they do if they were not going to be casual about it? Then, they just simply choose some direction and set out. Going by instincts, Ling Han found a direction, and thus everyone advanced in this direction. Father, I heard that you have given me a younger sister? Ling Jianxue approached him. In all these years, he had been cultivating in the world's paramount martial academy and teaching disciples there. He had not returned to Ling City even once, and it was unknown just how many times Hellion Xuanxue had complained about this rebellious, unfilial son who now no longer wanted his mother after getting a wife. Hence, he had not met Ling Shi. Ling Han nodded. Much better looking than you. Ling Jianxue's expression couldn't help but darken. Your precious daughter is a treasure, but why do you have to compare us? Whom in the world have I offended? Father, hadn't I just not gone back to see you guys for a few years? Do you have to say that? Ling Han laughed and communicated with him via divine sense. Your sister's name is Ling Shi, and she is presently in the martial academy. What? Ling Jianxue instantly got a shock. Ling Shi is my sister. He knew about Ling Shi. She was too well known. Not only was she publicly acknowledged as the most beautiful girl in the martial academy, her natural talent and cultivation was indescribably strong. It was said that someone had been eyeing Ling Shi and had once taken advantage of the fact that she had been training outside, wanting to forcefully take her down, but what happened in the end? A sixth heaven celestial king had made his move, but he was beaten horribly by a third heaven celestial king, and then dragged back to the martial academy. He obediently confessed what he had done and willingly accepted his punishment. Everyone was guessing that there had to be a powerful heavenly venerate standing behind Ling Shi. Otherwise, how could she possibly have beaten a sixth heaven when her cultivation level was only the third heaven? Now that he had found out that Ling Shi was his own sister, Ling Jianxue naturally understood. This heavenly venerate that was standing behind Ling Shi was actually his old man. "Father, you are really biased," he exclaimed in jealousy. Ling Han laughed. "Your sister is a girl, so how can a gruff man like you compare?" When Ling Han had the ability to move a small world, Ling Jianxue had already advanced to the heavenly venerable tier, so there was no need for him to go to the trouble at all. Ling Jianxue naturally knew this as well. Thus, he was just grouching. As the father and son spoke, a massive mountain very soon appeared in front of them. This mountain was quite strange as well. It was rounded and plump, like a bowl that had been turned upside down. Upon closer look, this was no mountain, but rather a giant burial mound. There were multiple golden-veined patterns on the burial mound, and they would occasionally flicker at a mysterious rhythm. We managed to find the place just by simply walking around? Everyone was surprised. Their luck was really too good, wasn't it? Let's see if there is any entrance. However, Ling Han was just staring blankly at the veined patterns on the giant burial mound, feeling surges of power in his body that gave him boundless enlightenment. The eighth seal moved restlessly and actually seemed like it was slowly mending. "Ling Han?" Everyone looked towards him. Ling Han nodded. "You guys can go and search first. If you can enter, you don't have to wait for me. A sudden inspiration has come upon me, and I am going to stay here for a while." Everyone could not understand, but since Ling Han was saying that, they naturally would not forcefully drag Ling Han with them either. "Be careful," everyone said. "You guys take care too," Ling Han replied as well. Now was not the time when everyone had joined forces against hysteria. Everyone was just working for their own desires. They all nodded and left. Ling Han sat down in a cross-legged position, staring at the giant burial mound. Endless enlightenment rose up in his heart. The eighth seal was indeed showing signs of mending. It was flickering with light, and there was a boundless feeling of profound mystery about it. Time passed quietly, and the eighth seal was slowly mending. The speed was not very fast, but it was acceptable to Ling Han. He felt like there was some resonance between his will and this giant mound, and that was why enlightenment had come to him, and he was capable of even mending a heavenly venerable seal. However, this was also because Ling Han had been studying the eighth seal constantly all these years, and had spent a very, very long time on it. Otherwise, this sudden enlightenment would not have come to him, and everything wouldn't have come smoothly. He revealed a slight smile. As the level of resonance became deeper and deeper, his appreciation also became deeper and deeper. The mending of the eighth seal was also becoming faster and faster. Half a year later, Ling Han suddenly broke into laughter. The eighth seal had finally been completed. He attempted to use the eighth seal to stimulate the unique power of the flaming frost realm, testing to see how far this seal could accelerate his speed of cultivation. The results stunned him. 27 times. It should be known that the ninth seal that had been nurtured from the blood, flesh, essence, and souls of countless third-tier, heavenly venerates had only managed to increase the efficiency by only 15 times. This was practically double that. Ling Han was stunned. This was too amazing. It did not just increase the rate of cultivation when it was used to augment battle prowess. The boost provided by the eighth seal would also cause the scale of increase to his battle prowess to be incredibly shocking. As expected, what truly belonged to him would be the very strongest. Why was the eighth seal so powerful? That was because it had been nurtured by Ling Han himself, so it was the most suited to him. Even if he dug it out and had Ling Jianxue inherit it, it would already be quite impressive if Ling Jianxue even managed to unleash more than a dozen times of the efficiency. Ling Han was very pleased. He had really been right in coming here. Even if there was nothing else to be gained, merely this alone was already completely worth the trip. "What are you laughing for? So noisy." A voice rang out behind Ling Han. Chapter 2811, 2811 I am Huang. Chapter 2811 I am Huang. 2811 I am Huang. Ling Han turned around to take a look, and saw there was a total of 7 people behind him. Huh. Ling Han's eyes set on one of them, and a hint of disbelief appeared in his gaze because this should be a man that could not possibly be alive. Huang. Ling Han remembered that he had flipped out at the two-realm battlefield of the Celestial Realm and killed Huang. After killing Huang, Ling Han then entered into the foreign realm and began his next adventure. How could a dead man come back to life? Could it be that it was only someone who resembled him? This was not impossible, because with how big the world was and how many living beings there were, it was not strange to have a similar appearance. However, this man was only a ninth heaven celestial king, so how had he managed to come here? There were only two possibilities. Firstly, he might have some kind of rare treasure that could protect him as he made his way here, or secondly, there was an elite that was taking care of him. Curiosity rose up in Ling Han as he stared at this man that very much resembled Huang. "Hey, I was talking to you," a heavenly venerate shouted at Ling Han. He was very young and had advanced to the heavenly venerable tier not long ago. He lacked the necessary steadiness and still had the arrogance of youth. Ling Han glanced at him. "Oh, what do you want to say?" "Nothing much. It's just that we were just walking peacefully, yet you suddenly howled out of nowhere, which gave us a shock. Hence, how do you plan on compensating us?" Another heavenly venerable tier asked. He was not as dramatic as the first heavenly venerate that had spoken, but his arrogance could not be concealed either. He was a second-tier heavenly venerate who had cultivated countless years more than the first heavenly venerate, but heavenly venerates were all proud, and his features were filled with an air of superiority that could not be concealed. Ling Han laughed. "Then how do you guys want me to compensate you? Sing a song or give us a dance," the first heavenly venerate said laughingly. He turned back to look at the others, yet won the smiling nods of quite a number of people. Heavenly venerates could not be insulted, but that was the attitude of mortals towards heavenly venerates. When a heavenly venerate dealt with another heavenly venerate, it was completely dependent on who was stronger. The powerful could do whatever they liked, and this was the reality of the world. Haha, I have never seen a heavenly venerate dance or sing before, so this is a good suggestion. That second-tier heavenly venerate rubbed his hands and laughed. Little Jean, that was a good idea. The first heavenly venerate was proud and self-satisfied, as if he had done something impressive. Among the 7 people, there was only one heavenly venerate who bore an aloof expression, incredibly proud, as if there was nothing in this world that could make his expression change. However, he did indeed have the right to be proud because he was the only third tier in their group of 7. "Hey, come and sing?" Heavenly venerate Little Jean shouted at Ling Han. Ling Han shook his head. Was he really a magnet for trouble? This time, he really did not have the slightest intention of trifling with anyone. "Whose brat are you? Haven't your elders taught you that you should not cause trouble for yourself?" Ling Han turned to look at that Little Jean, his expression filled with disdain. Little Jean couldn't help but feel infuriated. "We are both at the first tier, yet you actually dare lecture me like an aged and experienced elder. Just who do you think you are?" "How dare you?" he yelled, and stretched a hand to grab out at Ling Han. Similarly, being a first tier, he naturally had no fear of Ling Han. Ling Han gave a casual swipe, and the attack that Little Jean had launched was dispersed. He did not even cast a second look and set his eyes on the only ninth heaven celestial king in their group. "You look somewhat familiar to me. Tell me, what is your name?" "Damn you!" Little Jean flew into a thunderous rage. Ling Han actually dared to treat him so condescendingly. He roared in fury and was about to attack again. Ling Han's eyes became harsh, and he glared at Little Jean. "Don't be ungrateful and seek your own death." Little Jean felt his whole body grow cold from this glare, all the power inside his body dispersing without a trace. He felt like even his bones had become weak and almost wanted to flop onto the ground. Ling Han looked towards that ninth heaven celestial king with a smile and asked, "What is it? Can't you talk?" "Sir, you are too arrogant," a second-tier heavenly venerate spoke up. The strength of their group was actually extremely high, having 1 third tier, 3 second tiers, and 2 first tiers. That ninth heaven celestial king needed not be mentioned. He was purely a minor role. However, Were 6 heavenly venerates not awesome enough? Whatever the case, Ling Han was only a first-tier heavenly venerate. Ling Han shook his head. Why is there always someone that wants to interrupt me? I am Lu Xianting, second-tier heavenly venerate. That second-tier heavenly venerate said darkly and revealed his own cultivation level, intending to intimidate Ling Han. A mere first-tier heavenly venerate was nothing in front of a second-tier heavenly venerate. Things were different now as compared to the past, when all heavenly venerates had to unite together. Instead, they had now formed separate groups working for their own benefits, everyone motivated by their own desires. There were indeed more than half of the heavenly venerates that had returned to their respective dimensions, and it was possible only 10 to 20% of them had stayed behind. But how many heavenly venerates had there been here? Even if it was only 10 to 20% of them, that would be a shocking number. Ling Han gave an "oh" and retorted, "So what if you were second tier? Is that very amazing?" A muscle involuntarily jerked in Lu Xuanting's cheek. Was this person an idiot? A second tier is naturally amazing. I can easily crush you. How can you still act so arrogantly? You are truly arrogant, Lu Xianting exclaimed menacingly. Initially, they had only wanted to make fun of Ling Han and had not planned to kill Ling Han. However, Ling Han actually acted so arrogant, which made his killing intent flare. So what if he killed him? It was not wartime now. Ling Han nodded. I am not targeting you guys, but I have always maintained this kind of attitude towards trash. When these words fell, it was not only Lu Xuanting's furious expression that became more pronounced. Even that third-tier heavenly venerate that had maintained an expression of disdain raised a brow and tossed a glare at Ling Han. Ling Han really was courting death. Since you think that your life is too long, I shall help you end it. Lu Xianting moved, pressing his hand down on Ling Han. His heart was filled with disdain towards Ling Han. He simply threw a straight punch that headed straight for Ling Han's face. If a second-tier heavenly venerate did not even have that bit of confidence against a first-tier heavenly venerate, then what right would he have to be called a heavenly venerate? Ling Han remained motionless, and it wasn't right until this punch was close to reaching him that he suddenly shot out his foot in a kick. Pong! Lu Xianting was thus sent flying, turning into a tiny black in an instant. The remaining 6 people all had gaping mouths, showing expressions of absolute disbelief. What was going on here? A second-tier heavenly venerate had actually been sent flying with a kick from a first-tier heavenly venerate. What justice was there left in this world? They were all stunned. Even Lu Xianting could not withstand a single blow from Ling Han. Then it would be the same result if it was any of the other 2 second tiers. That third-tier heavenly venerate finally set his eyes on Ling Han and said, I have underestimated you. As it turns out, you have such great strength. No wonder you are so arrogant. Ling Han broke into a smile. I'm so, but it is no problem for me to beat up trash. Those 6 people all looked furious. Fuck, they had been called trash again. But Ling Han had not specifically referred to anyone. If they thought this was an insult to them, wasn't that just inviting more insults? That third-tier heavenly venerate began proudly, I am Ping Xinghai. However, he had just started talking when Ling Han stretched out his hand, signaling for him to be silent, and causing his words to come to an abrupt stop. What is it? Are you scared now? Ping Xinghai revealed a hint of arrogance, yet saw that Ling Han had already turned his face towards that 9th heaven and asked, You still have not answered me. What is your name? Instantly, the hint of pride on Ping Xinghai's face was frozen, and he became extremely embarrassed. The other man was not taking him seriously at all. That 9th heaven celestial king first glanced at Ping Xinghai, then smiled and answered, My name is Huang. Chapter 28:12, 28:12 The Furious Ping Xinghai. Chapter 28:12, 28:12 The Furious Ping Xinghai. 28:12 The Furious Ping Xinghai. Huang. Unexpectedly, he was also called Huang. Ling Han knew that there were many people that looked alike in the world, but would they also be called by the same name? That was practically impossible. That Huang of the celestial realm? Huang's eyes blinked. Are you also from the celestial realm? He wasn't some kind of huge celebrity, and being able to hang out with Lu Xinting and the others was also due to being under the banner of the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable. Coupled with his eloquence, he was able to get along with these people. Ling Han shook his head. So it's true that a bad person will live a long life of 1,000 years. I recall that I have already smashed you into smithereens. You are Ling Han. Huang couldn't help exclaiming, and then he revealed an extremely furious expression. Who was the person whom he hated most in this life? That had to be Ling Han, who had killed him with his bare hands. Had it not been sealed emotion who had rescued him despite the act being heaven-defying, then Huang would have been dead for a long time. Although he survived, his foundation was nevertheless seriously damaged. Therefore, being a ninth heaven celestial king was his limit, and he had no hope of advancing to the position of a heavenly venerate even in the flaming frost realm. This time, he had shamelessly asked others to bring him into this place in order to defy heavens and change his fate once again. He hoped to restore his foundations and rise again. This place was a magnificent vast world. Huang was obsessed with this place and hoped that he would be able to shake the world here. Originally, he should have recognized Ling Han at the first instant. However, who asked Ling Han to alter his appearance and aura at this time? And how could Huang, a ninth heaven celestial king, be able to see through it? Ling Han? Xinghai's eyes also blinked. Of course he had heard of Ling Han. The latter was an extremely renowned person in the realm battlefield back then. He was practically a legend on the first and second spatial level. However, the present time was no longer the era of the realm battlefield. I heard that you have obtained a heavenly venerable seal on the second spatial level, he inquired. His tone appeared to be extremely calm, but it couldn't hide traces of his excitement. Any of the heavenly venerable seals that wasn't one of the more widely known 7 seals was extremely precious, and even the 7th tier heavenly venerate wouldn't mind mastering one more. Admit it, you are already filled with greed. Don't keep saying what you have heard. Aren't you just being hypocritical? Ling Han reprimanded mercilessly. Xinghai was furious. He was just about to speak, but upon seeing Ling Han wave his hand dismissively, he suppressed his words. You step aside first. I don't have time to talk to you right now. Ling Han stared at Huang. It should be sealed emotion heavenly venerable who has saved you? In the low-level dimension of celestial realm, a first-tier heavenly venerate had the strength to be heaven-defying and snatch back a life. Huang nodded proudly. That's right. He was full of respect for the sealed emotion heavenly venerable, practically blindly worshipping him. That was only right as well. Those who could become heavenly venerates in the low-level dimension actually possessed amazing natural talent and were geniuses. Ling Han, Xinghai said as he gritted his teeth. He was beyond furious. Ling Han had cut him off when he was speaking twice, just because he wanted to settle accounts with a ninth heaven celestial king. Fuck, to hell with a ninth heaven celestial king who was nothing compared to him. Ling Han sighed and looked over at Xinghai. Are you blind? Can't you see that I'm busy right now? Yet you keep calling me. Are you brainless? Bastard! Xinghai bellowed. With a tap of his foot, he charged murderously towards Ling Han. Ka, where his foot stepped, the ground split open, revealing thousands of spider web-like cracks. Brandishing his palms, he pressed them towards Ling Han. He was really beyond furious. This blow wasn't merely attacking from a distance, but rather the power of third tier enshrouded his palms, and he was entirely filled with an aura of primal chaos. Coupled with his long hair fluttering about violently, he looked like a demonic god. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless. This was a third-tier heavenly venerate, with battle prowess that rivaled his own. He struck out with a punch towards Xinghai. Boom! Fists and palms clashed, creating endless ripples that reverberated in all directions. Xinghai revealed a shocked expression. He didn't get even the slightest upper hand in this strike. This first tier was already heaven-defying. Ling Han also revealed an expression of surprise. You do have some strength as a third tier, so you can't be regarded as rubbish. Fuck. Anyone who heard these words would have been furious. A first-tier heavenly venerate actually dared to act smug. However, seeing the strength exhibited by Ling Han, would anyone dare to accuse Ling Han of arrogance? Whether one was arrogant or not, it would depend on one's strength. I really don't believe it. Ping Xinghai humphed coldly and attacked again. This time, a fuzzy seal glowed in his palm as he channeled a heavenly venerable seal and operated a heavenly venerate technique. He unleashed his full strength in an instant. He wanted to suppress Ling Han at all costs. Just a heavenly venerable seal already made him so excited that he couldn't help himself. Ling Han gave a faint smile. He channeled a heavenly venerable seal, and coupled with the 9 transformations divine scroll, he went head-on with the opponent. It was just that, in this way, Ling Han was at a disadvantage. How could he be at a disadvantage? In terms of strength, they were almost the same. In terms of heavenly venerable seals, they all used one of the more widely known 7 seals, which were the same, capable of increasing one's power by 4 or 5 times. The key lay in the heavenly venerate technique. The 9 transformations divine scroll was created by a second-tier heavenly venerate. Although it was very powerful, it could only be limited to the second tier, but they were currently fighting a third-tier battle. The secret technique that Ping Xinghai had mastered had reached the 3rd tier, which allowed him to have an edge over his opponent. Haha, this is the strength of our backgrounds, Ping Xinghai said lightly, which nevertheless didn't inhibit his arrogance. He was the disciple of a 5th-tier heavenly venerate. The secret technique that he was currently channeling had been passed down to him by that 5th-tier heavenly venerate. Although it wasn't the core secret technique of that 5th-tier heavenly venerate, it was more than enough for him to use at the present moment. Ling Han nodded. After all, the 9 transformations divine scroll had been created by a 2nd-tier heavenly venerate. However, the 5 elements lightning technique and the indestructible heaven scroll were of a lower level, only the 1st tier. As long as the battle prowess exceeded the level of 2nd tier, then these 2 heavenly venerate techniques would not be able to keep up, and the desired effect couldn't be achieved. Before, Ling Han had only cared about improving his cultivation level. Now, he ought to go obtain a heavenly venerate technique worthy of his own battle prowess, or directly create a heavenly venerate technique himself. Hand over the heavenly venerable seal on your own, and I will spare your life, Ping Xinghai said arrogantly. He was only a 3rd tier, and it would be an extremely difficult feat for him to refine a heavenly venerate to extract the heavenly venerable seal. Therefore, if Ling Han was willing to surrender it on his own, it would save him a lot of unnecessary hassle. As for whether to spare Ling Han's life, that would depend on his mood. Ling Han smiled slightly. In this world, one must avoid being too conceited. Did you not want that heavenly venerable seal? Very well, I'll show it to you. Ling Han channeled the 9th seal, dashed forward and charged murderously towards Ping Xinghai. Boom, boom, boom. The 2 exchanged blows again, and Ping Xinghai's expression involuntarily drastically changed as Ling Han's battle prowess was now shockingly on par with his. Why was this so? It was very simple. The heavenly venerable seal that Ling Han channeled was higher in level than his. If one could increase the power by 5 times, while the other could increase by 10 times, then how could it be comparable? The strength of the 2 was equal. It was just that one was stronger in terms of heavenly venerable seal, while the other was better at using his heavenly venerate technique, which just happened to result in a tie. When Lu Xining came back, he couldn't help being dumbfounded when he saw that Ling Han was fighting Ping Xinghai to a draw. It was not just him, but also the same for the others. They had never seen such a powerful 1st-tier heavenly venerate before. Ping Xinghai gritted his teeth. He firmly believed that he would absolutely win. A heavenly venerable seal could only last for an hour, but a heavenly venerate technique was different, so as long as he could hold out until Ling Han was finished with releasing the heavenly venerable seal, he would be able to suppress Ling Han in one fell swoop. He would definitely suppress this opponent. Chapter 28:13 2813 Flee in Panic. Chapter 2813. 2813 Flee in Panic. 2813 Flee in Panic. I have no time to waste on you, Xinghai said as he resolutely channeled the eighth seal. Boom! A surge of power exploded out of him. The eighth seal could increase his battle prowess by 27 times. Just what kind of concept was this? The ninth seal could only do so by 15 times. What? Xinghai couldn't help exclaiming. He was too surprised to find that Xinghai's battle prowess could still be increased. Ain't this? Obviously, the secret technique being used by the other party had not changed. Could it be that he had also mastered another heavenly venerable seal, and it was of an even higher level than the previous one? Peng! Xinghai was only absent-minded for a brief moment, and immediately suffered a punch. The impact caused him to be cast several kilometers away. He could only feel the boiling sensation in his chest, and blood spilled from the corner of his mouth. Xinghai did not follow up on his assault to deliver another blow, but turned his gaze to Huang, his killing intent rising. Brother Situ, Brother Ma, save me. Huang hurriedly asked for help from the second tier, Heavenly Venerates. He naturally knew that even if it was an ordinary first-tier Heavenly Venerate who made a move against him, it would be impossible for him to equally match the opponent, not to mention that Xinghai was the enemy this time, and was so outrageously strong. Huang would be blasted to smithereens in a single blow. The expressions of those two second-tier Heavenly Venerates revealed their awkwardness, with them being somewhat trapped in a dilemma. If they were to act, they wouldn't be able to stop Xinghai at all, and would just be asking for humiliation themselves. But if they did not take action, then were they supposed to just watch their companion being bullied or even killed? Xinghai, please give us some face, a second-tier Heavenly Venerate said. My teacher is a fifth-tier Heavenly Venerate, Gua Junjia. I will remember this favor of yours. Another second-tier Heavenly Venerate also said, my ancestor is the fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate by the name of Lu Yi. I sincerely ask Brother Ling to show some mercy. They all brought up their powerful backers, knowing that it was impossible to make Xinghai bow his head based on their own merits. Xinghai chuckled. So when I don't give you face, you will bring up the fourth-tier and fifth-tier Heavenly Venerates to suppress me? Sigh, I don't have a precedent of giving rubbish face, not this time, nor in the future. With a stretch of his hand, Xinghai instantly captured Huang. How was it possible for a second tier to be able to stop him? Xiao, Xinghai leapt back towards them, his face full of malice. To be honest, it was possible for him and Xinghai to be equally matched in a fight. Given that the time for the Heavenly Venerable Seal to release energy was limited, as long as he could endure it, he was completely capable of gaining the upper hand with the secret technique that he had mastered. However, gaining the upper hand was one thing, and being able to suppress Xinghai was another matter altogether. Besides, what if he wasn't able to survive through Xinghai's explosion of power? Thinking about it this way, he only desired to obtain the Heavenly Venerable Seal that Xinghai had more. If he could master it, how powerful would his battle prowess be then? The question was, could he do it? Huang, where is the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable right now? Xinghai asked, lifting up Huang. Before, this would have been easy as the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable had to be on the fourth spatial level of the realm battlefield. However, presently there was only the eighth spatial level in the realm battlefield, and with the Genesis world being so vast, where could Xinghai go to locate him? Huang gazed at Xinghai coldly and said, if you want to kill me, then do it. But if you think that I'll betray my master, you're dreaming. He had great reverence for the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable. The latter wasn't just a teacher to him, but was equivalent to a god. Xinghai nodded. Although I find your behavior shameless, at least you have some shining points. Humph, what's the point of such talk? Huang raised his neck. He didn't care about being spared or killed, because the sealed emotion Heavenly Venerable carried a mark of his life, so even if he were to die, it wouldn't matter. As long as the sealed emotion was still alive, Huang could be resurrected once again. Therefore, he was able to have no regard for his life and confront Xinghai head-on. Okay, I'll send you off then. Ling Han's grip tightened, and suddenly Huang's neck was tilted at a crooked angle. He died on the spot. Committing murder right in my face. You are really arrogant, Ping Xinghai said sternly. He was extremely angry. Ling Han smiled. Okay, let me ask, who among you wants to be my enemy? His gaze swept across the crowd. With the exception of Ping Xinghai, no one dared to look at him as they all lowered their heads. Ha, ha. Ping Xinghai sneered, causing the people behind him to feel chills down their spine. Do you dare to fight? He asked the people behind him. Those people hesitated for a moment before saying, we will go all the way with Brother Ping. Only then did Ping Xinghai nod his head. With me restraining him, he won't be able to hurt you. Once his heavenly venerable seal has been released completely, we can take him down. Yes. Everyone nodded. Ling Han shook his head. Since all of you insist on a fight, then I'll fulfill your wish. Let's go. Ping Xinghai rushed over first, unleashing a shot towards Ling Han. He had to restrain Ling Han, otherwise the five of them would definitely be killed in an instant if Ling Han was allowed to unleash his might. You have overestimated your own abilities. Ling Han snorted, and he also unleashed a shot at full strength. Pong! He had boosted himself with the 8th seal, and his battle prowess was extremely terrifying. With a single kick, he sent Ping Xinghai flying away. Although he didn't manage to hurt the other party, it also made him fly backwards for more than a few kilometers. Having drawn out the distance at this moment, Ling Han immediately went charging murderously towards Lu Xianting and the others. He showed no mercy. Since he had already made a move, he would kill them. Pong! With just a single punch, a first-tier heavenly venerate was blasted into smithereens. He didn't even have the qualifications to let Ling Han know his name. Damn it! Ping Xinghai came charging back murderously, with his face showing a furious expression. He had even made a declaration just earlier that as long as he had Ling Han restrained, then everything would be fine. However, he had barely finished speaking those words, and a lackey was instantly killed. How embarrassing for him! How could he face the crowd? He turned his anger into strength and attacked Ling Han frantically. Ling Han was indifferent to it. He casually countered the attacks, and he sent Ping Xinghai flying with a kick once again after a few blows. Fuck! Ping Xinghai couldn't help cursing when he was sent flying again, his cultivation level and confidence notwithstanding. Within the past hour, Ling Han's battle prowess had an absolute advantage over his, so he had no problem defending himself, but intending to stop Ling Han from committing murder was truly wishful thinking. He was too optimistic, thinking that he could stop Ling Han. Sure enough, Ling Han punched out again and blasted Lu Xianting into smithereens. Once he had made a move, he was absolutely merciless. Retreat! Retreat! Ping Xinghai came back to prevent Ling Han from killing any further. He was able to block Ling Han at this point. Although it was only a few moves, a heavenly venerate would only need this little bit of time to escape. The remaining 3 quickly dispersed. In fact, there was no need for Ping Xinghai to shout it, as they were already planning to retreat. Although they had reverence for Ping Xinghai and his master, who was a 5th-tier heavenly venerate, it was absolutely impossible for them to risk their own lives for this. Ping Xinghai blocked a few moves, and was sent flying by a kick from Ling Han once again. However, in such a brief moment, those 3 had fled without a trace. He laughed out loud. This was the first time that he had gained an upper hand after fighting for so long, although such an upper hand was indeed too pitiful. Ling Han, you have already shown off your ability and offended too many people. You will have a miserable end, Ping Xinghai said. All 3 people who were killed by Ling Han had powerful backers, with their masters or elders being at least 3rd-tier heavenly venerates. Ling Han shook his head. You should take care of yourself first. He charged forward murderously. No matter what, he was determined to beat up this guy and teach him a lesson. Pong, pong, pong. He kept kicking. He kicked Ping Xinghai around like a ball. Ping Xinghai was about to explode from anger. However, there was nothing he could do about it given the difference in strength. Since the lackeys had already fled, and he had no intention to continue fighting. What was the point in him getting a thrashing? He feigned launching another attack, then turned around and disappeared. Chapter 28:14. 28:14 Sealing the Doorway. Chapter 28:14. 28:14 Sealing the Doorway. 28:14 Sealing the Doorway. Ling Han did not pursue. He was indeed stronger than Ping Xinghai, but this superiority was limited. Furthermore, there was a time restraint to using heavenly venerable seals. If he could not suppress the other party in a short period of time, he himself would be falling into a disadvantage instead. Ling Han shook his head. It could not be helped. Who asked him not to have mastered a higher-level heavenly venerate technique? He should improve his fists of fury so that it would correspond to his strength. Since he had already walked out a path of his own, he naturally should also create a corresponding technique. In this instant, Ling Han was slightly distracted, thinking about how he was going to fuse fists of fury with this unique path that he had walked. He shivered and regained his wits. Now was not the time to be thinking about this. Ling Han shook his head, and his feet moved. He began circling around this giant tomb, looking for an entrance. Not too long later, he discovered that the entrance was a pair of stone doors. They were 300 meters tall and as wide as 210 meters, looking very grand. Was this actually the tomb of a dead man, or a palace? Ling Han was a little uncertain now. You are already dead, yet you are still so particular. Forget it. It was not his tomb in any case. The doors had already been pushed open, and Ling Han did not hesitate, either, striding inside. This doorway was huge, and the passage inside was also wide, matching the giant doorway. The walls glowed by themselves, but one could not see too far, as their range of vision was blocked by something. Strange, Ling Han thought. As he walked, he stretched out his hand to touch the walls, sensing the surroundings around him. What surprised him was that his divine sense was actually unable to penetrate this wall. It was like, the walls of the realm battlefield, which had the intercepting powers of the divine sense of a heavenly venerate. Though this could not compare to devouring metal, it was still very valuable. It was the main material used to construct heavenly venerable tier grand formations. In fact, it could even unleash the might of the 6th tier. Ling Han felt an impulse to knock down this wall and stow it away. If it could be used to lay down defensive walls for his Ling city, then an ordinary heavenly venerate would need some amount of time to be able to invade successfully, leaving them enough time to take measures. Forget it. He had best find that heavenly venerable seal first. His own strength was what was most important. Ling Han forcefully suppressed his impulse and strode forwards, but he had already set his eyes on this place. The passageway was very long, and after walking for over 50 kilometers, it suddenly became clear ahead. A massive plaza appeared, so high that the ceiling could not be seen. Because there was something invisible blocking their vision, one could only feel that it was very, very high. Ling Han was not the only one in the plaza. Instead, there were a lot of people, who were divided into multiple smaller groups, scattered around here and there. Looking around, he found out that every single person here was basically a heavenly venerate. What were so many people waiting around here for? Ling Han's gaze wandered, and he very quickly located the karmic life, heavenly venerable, and the others, so strode over to them. Have you made any gains? The Empress asked. She and Huang naturally knew Ling Han best, and knew that he had to have attained some kind of enlightenment when he had stayed behind and not gone with them previously. Ling Han nodded. Very good. He paused and then asked, what is going on now? The karmic life, heavenly venerable, replied, though that ancient heavenly venerate has died, he has left behind his inheritance. Roughly speaking, there are a total of 4 areas here, and they are Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermillion Bird, and Black Tortoise Palace, respectively. This is the White Tiger Palace. Ling Han gave an O. No wonder they were able to find the right place just by wandering around. As it turned out, there were palaces in all 4 directions. Indeed, whichever direction they headed in, they would encounter a right place. Then why are we all standing here? He asked. The karmic life, heavenly venerable, shook his head and sighed. To enter into the palace and obtain the inheritance, one would have to pass a test. But the problem now is that there are 3 4th-tier heavenly venerates here, and they have worked together to seal off the path, not allowing anyone a chance to accept the test. Oh, Xinghai was surprised. These 3 people were really overbearing. Could it be that they weren't afraid that they would arouse public resentment? Upon second thought, with how strong a 4th-tier heavenly venerate, one would be able to match 100 3rd-tiers, and just how many 3rd-tiers were there in total here? Hence, so what if the 3 of them were overbearing? At least they hadn't chased everyone off. Then have they undergone the test? Xinghai asked. The karmic life, heavenly venerable, shook his head. How could they have not? It is just that they have not passed. Xinghai was surprised. Being able to become 4th-tiers, just how powerful and domineering did they have to be? And the 3 of them actually hadn't passed the test. This really was quite hard to believe. He asked smilingly, then what do they mean by this? They themselves were not able to obtain it, and forbade others from even trying? The karmic life, heavenly venerable, sighed, and replied, who knows what they're thinking? Perhaps they wish to summon their own disciples to try. After all, one does not allow benefits created by one's own work to go to others. The large black dog interrupted. Xinghai nodded. That may be possible. Who cares what the possible reason is? Most importantly, these 3 bastards have blocked off the way, and we will not have any chance to make an attempt at all. The large black dog cursed fluidly, filled with displeasure. Let me take a look, Xinghai said. He walked forwards, and not too long afterwards, he saw 3 young people presently sitting in cross-legged positions. However, it was only their appearance that was young. Any one of them had incredibly deep, profound gazes, exuding an aura marked by vicissitudes of time. Not far behind them, there was a completely silver palace that was built like a fierce tiger ready to pounce, as if it would erupt with a world-shaking strike at any instant. The palace had no windows, and there was only a single entry, which was the main door. But though the front door was open, it was a revolving light door. Clearly, entering through this door would not lead into the palace, but rather the test that the karmic life, heavenly venerable, had spoken about. Because some people had already entered the light door before these 3 heavenly venerates had sealed off the doorway. However, they had all come back out after failing, and that was how others knew about the situation here. Xinghai observed. Though these 3 4th-tier heavenly venerates looked relaxed and laid back, and were sitting very casually, Xinghai was very clear. They had sealed off all routes that would lead to entering into the light door. Wherever one was barging in from, they would be met with the combined attacks of the 3 heavenly venerates. These were 4th-tiers. What 3rd-tier would have this kind of courage to take their attacks head-on? A 4th-tier heavenly venerate suddenly looked towards Xinghai, his eyes extremely sharp, causing pain in Xinghai's own eyes as he was almost blinded. However, when this heavenly venerate saw that Xinghai was only a 1st-tier heavenly venerate, he withdrew his gaze after a single glance, not bothering to spare more attention on him. Xinghai stepped back, channeling the indestructible heaven scroll. After a long while, the pain in his eyes finally subsided. He had to admit that a 4th-tier was indeed strong. The fact that Xinghai could kill He Kun was completely due to the letter that Chu Hao had given to him. Otherwise, he would have only been able to last for 40-plus moves or so at most, and the combined forces of 3 great 4th-tiers would be sufficient to kill him with a single blow. If Xinghai took the risk and barged in forcefully, the chances of him directly collapsing would be even higher. Thus, Xinghai returned to the Empress's side. It is now a stalemate, Xinghai said. The Empress and the others nodded. Though they knew that Xinghai was very strong and extremely freakish, he was only a 1st-tier. After all, it was very normal that he would be unable to contend with a 4th-tier. So we just give up? The large black dog asked, unwilling to resign. Or should we go and take a look at the other 3 palaces? Ling Jianxue suggested. Xinghai thought for a while. You guys go to the other 3 palaces first. I will wait here. What are you waiting for? Xinghai slowly replied. As long as another 4th-tier heavenly venerate arrives, even if he will also join this trio, There will definitely be a process before that. That moment is key to breaking this stalemate. Chapter 28:15, 28:15 Instigating. Chapter 28:15, 2815 Instigating. 2815 Instigating. Ling Han insisted on staying here, so the karmic life Heavenly Venerable and the others did not persuade him further and left. Even if Ling Han guessed correctly, and the balance between the three great Heavenly Venerates would be broken when a fourth-tier Heavenly Venerate arrived, Ling Han would be the only one that could take hold of that fleeting instant. Otherwise, someone with the strength of a first-tier or second-tier Heavenly Venerate would only be instantly killed by a fourth-tier. Ling Han's companions left, hoping that there wasn't anybody as overbearing as these blocking the entrance in the other three palaces. Ling Han waited patiently. In any case, he was not wasting time, as he was presently modifying the Fists of Fury. This process needed an extensive amount of time. Thankfully, though his time physique could not take effect on his physical body, there was completely no problem with providing a boost to his divine sense, allowing him to slowly stroll in the extensive flow of time. It had already been a long time since Ling Han had last studied the Fists of Fury. That was because he had long ago obtained a Heavenly Venerate technique, its might far surpassing Fists of Fury, so what need was there for him to expend the effort? It was only now when the Heavenly Venerate technique could no longer catch up to his battle prowess that he was forced to study Fists of Fury. Time passed by endlessly, and Ling Han's improvement came very fast. The might of Fists of Fury soared, reaching peak stage 9th heaven. But after that, it slowed down. What Heavenly Venerate technique had not been created through countless years of accumulated experience and knowledge? Even if Ling Han used his time physique, whereby one day was equivalent to close to 3 years under normal conditions, he was still unable to complete his breakthrough in a short period of time. Ling Han was not worried. This was something that he had produced from his own studies. As long as it advanced to the Heavenly Venerable tier, his battle prowess would definitely spike greatly. After several days, Ling Han was still stuck with the Heavenly Venerable tier. He stopped. This was not something that could be done overnight. He should have a change of pace. He paused slightly and realized that there were currently a few familiar people walking towards him. It was Ping Xinghai and his group. They had actually come here as well? Ling Han's eyes darted around, and a smile appeared at the corners of Ling Han's lips. If there was anyone who was familiar with him, they would be able to guess that this guy had to be having some mischievous plans in mind. With Ling Han's thought, his appearance changed again, and his aura also changed accordingly. Those stronger than him could see through his disguise, but under circumstances when strength was equal on both sides, this was very safe. Ling Han did not move immediately, but rather waited first. Ping Xinghai naturally was stopped by those 3 fourth tiers as well. He was just a 3rd tier, and though this was already enough to stand among the ranks at the summit of the Genesis world, a 4th tier was still enough to overcome a 3rd tier. There was completely no need to give any face. He was very angered, and had even announced the name of his master, yet those 3 people still refused to bend at all. This had gone too far. Didn't they know that his master was a 5th tier? When Ling Han saw how this guy's expression became menacing, he felt like it was about time, and thus strode out. "Halt! What do you want?" a 1st tier immediately yelled at Ling Han. Ling Han raised his clasped fists. "I am Nailan Xingkong, and I have a matter to discuss with Brother Ping." "How dare you?" A mere 1st tier Heavenly Venerate actually dares to treat a 3rd tier as an equal? That 1st tier Heavenly Venerate's eyes turned cold as he glared at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled. "Brother Ping, don't you think those 3 people have gone too far by sealing off the doorway and forbidding us entry?" Originally, Ping Xinghai had ignored Ling Han completely, but these words just happened to be exactly what he was feeling, making his expression change slightly. He looked towards Ling Han. "What ideas do you have?" He was very displeased. Previously, before they had entered here, their forces had been already damaged, and now they were even blocked off from entering. When had he suffered such treatment before? Ling Han smiled and said, "While the might of 4th tier Heavenly Venerates is frightening, Brother Ping is the disciple of a Lord 5th tier, and you yourself are a 3rd tier. You only have to holler, and with the displeasure of everyone present, they would definitely all unite underneath Brother Ping's banner. By then, everyone could rush forth together, and a great number of people would definitely be able to barge in through that door. Ping Xinghai hesitated slightly, yet humphed and retorted, "Are you trying to use me like a tool?" This guy was not stupid. True, how could any idiot be able to become a heavenly venerate? Xinghai naturally would not give up and continued, "Your words are incorrect, Brother Ping. When one comes across injustice, one should stand up. We are all cultivators, so isn't what we are pursuing the settling of debts of gratitude and revenge quickly? Though those 3 lords are strong, they still can't blot out the heavens with one hand. It is one thing for them to be strong and enter first, but they have not gained anything, yet still wish to stop others. That is going too far. I think that with Brother Ping's natural talent and strength, you will definitely be able to breeze through the test left behind by that ancient heavenly venerate. Doing such a thing is completely eating away at Brother Ping's fated opportunity. This has really gone too far." These words were reasonable and justified, and added with the fact that Ping Xinghai had been displeased in the first place, it easily resulted in a resonance. He humphed. Though he had not replied, he was already moved. Xinghai continued further, paying a considerable number of compliments, so disgustingly sweet that even he himself wanted to throw up. After long periods of time in the large black dog's company, not only was Xinghai top tier in the ability to throw insults, his ability of pushing others onto a pedestal was not to be underestimated, either, his every word eliciting satisfaction from Ping Xinghai. It should be known that Ping Xinghai was presently in a state of displeasure. Previously, his lackeys had been killed, and now they were blocked here. Though his 3 lackeys were still being yes-men to him, they bore a lot of secret resentment for him. He knew about this, but he had indeed experienced a great loss at Xinghai's hands, so he could not refute it. Now, with Xinghai pushing him further and further up onto a pedestal, he naturally felt extremely pleased. "All right, it can be no one but me, so I shall take this responsibility." Ping Xinghai nodded, appearing very heroic. The reason he could be persuaded was naturally because of himself. Just like how Xinghai had said, Ping Xinghai had absolute trust in his natural talent. He was certain that he would be able to barge through the test ahead and obtain the inheritance of that ancient heavenly venerate. Defeated by Xinghai, he presently felt an incredible yearning for a higher level, heavenly venerable seal. Ping Xinghai was swift in his decision. Immediately, he began to move, communicating with the various groups. He himself was a 3rd tier, and added with the fact that he was backed by a 5th tier, there really were a considerable number that were willing to join him. Previously, it was because no one was organizing them, so they were in a state of disunity. Now that they had allied together, they could no longer be underestimated. There were a considerable number of people here that were backed by 4th tiers and 5th tiers, and they were sure that these 3 4th tiers would not dare to deliver a fatal strike against them. Led by Ping Xinghai, they approached the entrance to the palace. "My 3 lords," Ping Xinghai clasped his fists together respectfully. "We respect the 3 of you very much, and we are certain that the 3 lords would also be understanding of us and our feelings of wanting to venture into this space to explore. We dearly hope that the 3 lords can accommodate us." A 4th tier looked towards Ping Xinghai. "You people have schemed for 2 days, and it is all so that you can force us to step aside?" Before Ping Xinghai had the chance to speak, Xinghai butted in. "You 3 old geezers, could it be that you people don't know who our young Master Ping is? He is a noble, dignified 3rd tier heavenly venerate, and his master is a 5th tier. So what if he demands that you 3 step aside? What disagreement do you have about that?" Gasp! Ping Xinghai couldn't help but inhale sharply. How could Xinghai say these words? Even if Ping Xinghai was thinking the same thing, he could not say it out loud, and definitely could not say these words in full public, right to their faces. That would be sparking off a war. "How dare you?" A 4th tier dressed in black robes rebuked with a glare, exuding boundless might, and the other 2 4th tiers also looked menacing, looking like they were ready to attack. Ping Xinghai hurriedly tried to make amends and said, "My three lords, please don't be arrogant. We have the advantage in numbers, so what do we have to fear from you guys?" Ling Han butted in again. Holy fuck. Chapter 2816, 2816 Tricked. Chapter 2816, 2816 Tricked. 2816 Tricked. It was Ping Xinghai that was the leader, so Ling Han naturally was considered to be one of Ping Xinghai's people. The black-robed fourth tier looked menacingly at Ping Xinghai and stretched out his hand, but he was aiming for Ling Han. "Let's charge together, guys. Rush past these doors, and the heavenly venerable seal and supreme secret technique is waiting for us." Ling Han shouted, but he was rapidly retreating himself. The giant hand descended, but Ling Han had rapidly retreated, causing a great many people to be caught in the range of this blow. There was no one who would be willing to just surrender, and added with the fact that the actions of these three fourth tiers had long since caused public outrage, everyone had already been mentally prepared to fight when they had stood together. So when they saw that the fourth tier Heavenly Venerate had attacked first, there were people that instantly moved to counterattack. With one leading the way, this instantly caused a chain reaction, and even more people moved to attack. Pong, pong, pong. A battle royale immediately erupted. Humph, you people truly are reckless. The other two fourth tiers looked towards Ping Xinghai menacingly. This had to have been deliberately planned by this boy, and his purpose was to create chaos so that he could sneak in. Otherwise, a first-tier Heavenly Venerate would not even be able to pass through the aura field that they had set up. Though fourth tiers had an overwhelming advantage, these three fourth tiers did not dare to really start a massacre. After all, there were a great many people here who were backed by people that could stand as their equals, or even surpass them. The treasure had not appeared now, so there really was no reason to offend these people just for this. Hence, the remaining two fourth-tier Heavenly Venerates had set their eyes on Ping Xinghai. To catch bandits, capture the ringleader. As long as they captured this person who had led the others to cause trouble, the others naturally would return to being a pile of scattered sand. Shwa, shwa. The two great fourth-tier elites moved at the same time, grabbing towards Ping Xinghai. Ping Xinghai felt extremely wronged. Though he had gathered the others to force the three great elites to step aside, he did not have the slightest intention of sparking off a battle. That was because he knew very well that it would be useless even if all of them joined forces. It was absolutely impossible that they would be able to match these three fourth-tier Heavenly Venerates. But now, two fourth-tier elites were actually attacking him simultaneously, causing him to be overwhelmed by the flattery and honor. Why had things played out in this way? Show. Right at this moment, a figure streaked out, leaping towards that revolving light door. Humph! Though the two fourth tiers had made their move against Ping Xinghai, how could it be that a noble, dignified fourth tier would need to go all out just to deal with a third tier? One of the fourth tiers stretched out his other hand to strike that figure, appearing extremely disdainful. This was just a mere first tier. Pong! However, he had miscalculated. Faced with this strike, that first-tier Heavenly Venerate did not dodge, but rather clenched a fist and countered his strike. You are seeking death, the fourth tier thought. Taking on the attack of a fourth tier head-on, even if he did not die, it would still cause severe injury. But in the next instant, his eyes bulged widely. That man actually managed to parry this strike from him. Though he had not used full power in this attack, it had still reached the third tier. Wouldn't suppressing a mere first tier be a piece of cake? Yet Ping Xinghai immediately called out, Ling Han. He had not recognized Ling Han, but what other first tier could match the might of a third tier? Ping Xinghai had been tricked. Realization immediately dawned on him. He had fallen for Ling Han's evil trap. This guy had done so many things, and his purpose was to instigate everyone to create an opening for him so that he could sneak in during the chaos and enter the palace. Damn it! Damn it! Ping Xinghai almost spluttered out a mouthful of blood. Previously, Ling Han had killed 3 of his lackeys, and now he was actually shouting a battle cry for his sake. creating a chance for him. Just how stupid was he? Damn it! Those two fourth tiers were furious. They had only taken one misstep, and now the whole game was lost. They had not thought that Xinghai was the real person who had been planning to sneak in under the cover of chaos, and he was actually hiding so deeply, being a first-tier heavenly venerate that actually had the strength of third tier. They both glared furiously at Ping Xinghai. This had to be one of the main culprits as well. Otherwise, why would he have so earnestly served Xinghai? Peng! The attacks of the duo landed. When a fourth tier moved, much less when two combined their attacks, how was a third tier supposed to block that? Ping Xinghai was instantly suppressed with a single strike. Pooh! Ping Xinghai had still thrown up a mouthful of blood ultimately. His resentment overflowed. Just thinking of Xinghai appearing in front of him, he could eat Xinghai alive. He really felt very wronged playing the fool for him. Xiao! Xinghai had already rushed into the light door. Led by a mysterious energy, he appeared in a plane. There were damaged suits of armor scattered everywhere and corpses lying here and there, exuding an air of war and battle. A flag was stuck into the ground. There was no symbol on it, but only a few words, "Never step back." Never step back? These were heroic words, but faced with powerful enemies, just how many people could live up to the words, "never stepping back"? Moreover, retreat was also a kind of tactic. Whether it was a battle between two people or a large-scale war, retreat was always an option. Xinghai had not even finished the thought when he saw that a large, massive army had appeared ahead of him. Their numbers were stunning, as great as millions, and all of them exuded an aura that reached the heavenly venerable tier. Even if these were all first-tier heavenly venerates, even a fourth-tier heavenly venerate would have to avoid them under the crushing force of millions of them. Never step back? Impossible. Xinghai nodded. No wonder even 3 fourth-tier elites had not been able to pass this kind of test. Taking even a single step back would probably be considered failing. But the problem here was, who would be able not to retreat with an army of millions charging towards him? Ha ha ha. Xinghai erupted into loud laughter and charged forwards. Peng! He was like a lion that pounced into a flock of lambs, charging right into the main force of the enemy troops. Brandishing both fists, he instantly sent over 100 powerful enemies flying. Faced with Xinghai, a first tier was completely outmatched. Peng, peng, peng. With a punch, powerful foes were blasted into nothing one after another, and the imagery was extraordinarily realistic. There were blood spraying and corpses collapsing here and there, exuding an intense chill. However, Xinghai knew that all this had to be only an illusion. If a fifth-tier heavenly venerate could really create such a great army of heavenly venerates, wouldn't this world be completely chaotic? White tigers symbolize slaughter, so the test here was a test of slaughter. If so, he would just kill to his heart's content. Xinghai's black locks fluttered wildly as he unleashed a massacre. However, though his strength reached the third tier, he still couldn't hold up to the fact that the number of heavenly venerates here was really too great, so he had still taken a few blows, causing him to throw up blood and break bones. However, as Xinghai channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, he maintained his battle prowess. His hands balled into fists, and he unleashed fists of fury. This was just the right opportunity to use these countless heavenly venerates to temper his supreme fist intent. Xinghai was the type to be more motivated the greater the pressure on him was. Every time he sustained injury, his motivation would increase slightly, and comprehension dawned on him continuously, endlessly unfurling in his mind. Xinghai laughed loudly and felt a great sense of satisfaction and a pleasure he could not describe. So what if he was wounded? What cultivator would not suffer injury? Time passed endlessly. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, but there was never a pause to the battle. More and more troops appeared, wanting to drown Xinghai completely. These enemies only had the aura of heavenly venerates, but their strength was truly limited. Otherwise, even Xinghai would not dare go so crazy, not taking one step back even when faced with millions of first-tier heavenly venerates. But it seemed like this kind of battle would never end, and even one with the strongest and most resolute willpower would begin to falter. Yet Ling Han enjoyed this. He treated this battle as the best way to temper his fist technique, completely forgetting his intention for entering into this place. He forged onwards bravely, not taking even half a step back. Chapter 28:17, 28:17 being taught. Chapter 28:17, 28:17 being taught. 28:17 being taught. It was unknown how long had passed. Ling Han only felt the sudden surge in power in his fist technique. With a punch, hundreds of enemies flew into the air simultaneously, and then all of them exploded to bits. Although he had been able to send hundreds of them flying with a single punch before, at most only dozens of them would have been killed by him on the spot, while the others would only have suffered a little injury. But this time, his punch was so powerful that he could kill hundreds of people in one go. Realization came to Ling Han abruptly. He found that the Fists of Fury already possessed heavenly venerable tier power. He had finally advanced this fist technique to the level of heavenly venerable tier. Of course, it just recently advanced to the heavenly venerable tier, and it would take a long time to fully match his battle prowess of the third tier. When Ling Han came back to his senses, he realized that his body was riddled with injuries, with every wound so deep that even his bones were visible. Normally, he ought to have lost his battle prowess with such serious injuries, or at least see his battle prowess plummet, not to mention being so severely wounded to the point of just waiting for death, right? But he didn't feel that way at all. Apart from being exhausted, his battle prowess was at its peak. He wasn't surprised, because he knew that all of this had to be an illusion, but it was so real that even a fourth-tier heavenly venerate could hardly tell the difference. That resulted in no one having passed the test and successfully entering into the palace. Ling Han laughed loudly. Come on, to say nothing of 1 million or 10 million. No matter how many, I will take them all on. He continued on with the killing spree. This was an extremely rare chance to train. Perhaps only a fifth-tier heavenly venerate could create such a setup, so it would be too silly not to seize this opportunity. However, the length of training this time far exceeded Ling Han's expectations. 10,000 years, 100,000 years, 1 million years. Time continued to pass, but the battle showed no signs of stopping. This inevitably would make people wonder, would there never be an end to it? Ling Han firmly believed that since the test was not over yet, he should study the fist technique, so he didn't waste time. 2 million years, 5 million years, 10 million years. Finally, when the count reached 10 million years, there was no new army. Shio, Ling Han felt his body tremble. He instantly appeared in a new place, and he saw that he was inside a palace. He looked at his body again. There wasn't even a little bit of injury, but he exuded a sense of being worn out, as if he had gone through eternity. How long have I been out in the world of consciousness? Ling Han murmured. He checked his body. Having reached his heights, he could calculate how much time had passed just by looking at the subtle changes in his body. It was actually 10,000 years. Wait, I have fought in the world of consciousness for 10 million years, but the reality is that 10,000 years have passed, which matches exactly the time acceleration effects of my physique. At the heavenly venerable tier, it is impossible for the physical body to be either accelerated or decelerated. It is tempered by fundamental power and surpasses the regulations. Naturally, it is not affected by regulations. Time could still be accelerated for the spirit, but this acceleration is limited to under 1,000 times. So, my physical body has been standing here for 10,000 years, but I have been fighting in the spiritual world for 10 million years. Ling Han stretched his muscles, and suddenly there was a majestic force roaring within his body. Before, when his consciousness was in another world, his physical body was in hibernation. Now that his consciousness has returned, his body suddenly became as strong as a dragon. My cultivation level has actually improved slightly. Ling Han was surprised. With the passing of 10,000 years, his progress was actually faster than when he was practicing cultivation normally, and it was even much faster at that. Battle is indeed the fastest way to improve, even in the world of consciousness. However, I have too many powers of dimension within my body, and unlike other heavenly venerates, this kind of power has no limit. I don't know how long it will take to reach the peak of the first tier, but it is still not enough for me to break through to the second tier. Instead, the Fists of Fury. Xinghai showed a satisfied smile. After 10 million years, he had advanced the Fists of Fury to the second tier, which truly made him happy. Huang. A skull suddenly floated up in front of Xinghai. What was going on? Although it was a skull, it didn't look hideous at all. The bones were light golden in color, and there was an extremely complicated seal on the skull. It was even more difficult to comprehend than the sum of the stars in the sky. In fact, Xinghai expressed joy as this was a heavenly venerable seal. He reached out and touched the skull, and a star chart suddenly appeared in his consciousness, forming a mysterious seal. Xinghai quickly sat down cross-legged. A heavenly venerable seal could only be transmitted once, so if he was to miss out any detail, it would be impossible to get it again unless his luck was heaven-defying enough to restore it under some special circumstances. Time passed quietly, and this star chart was also slowly fading. It would completely dim within 3 days at most. However, a thought flashed across Xinghai's mind. A glow appeared in his mind, and the star map reappeared immediately. He had preliminarily mastered this heavenly venerable seal, but of course it would be a long time before he could use it. Xinghai looked at the skull in front of him again. The seal on it has disappeared. As the heavenly venerable seal had been passed on to Xinghai, it was naturally impossible for it to continue existing. The skull was also shattered, transforming into countless starlight particles, flying in the air, and fusing with the great Tao of heaven and earth. A powerful psychic message also sounded in Xinghai's consciousness. I am Four Directions, who has failed in attempting to break through to the 6th tier, and has neither disciples nor descendants. In order to avoid losing the lifetime of comprehension I have learned, I have purposely arranged for this huge tomb to store 4 bones with my mark for the 4 seals that I have deduced during my lifetime to pass on to those who are predestined. If the 4 seals can be united, it can also be used to deduce a divine skill that I have once used. But if the 4 seals can't be combined, then there is no need to mention it. Boom! This message disappeared immediately without a trace. Xinghai stood upright and bowed deeply towards the palace. Senior is righteous. This junior is full of admiration. In order to pass on what he had learned, the heavenly venerate 4 directions even left remains such as his skull. It couldn't be helped. How could the heavenly venerable seals be born by any random things? Generally speaking, whoever it was would die eventually, but wasn't still being willing to leave his remains abusing himself. That was why Xinghai was full of respect for the man. He was not in a hurry to leave, and continued to comprehend the 10th seal that he had just obtained. If he didn't master it as soon as possible, it would also disappear from his mind. After more than 10 years, Xinghai suddenly discovered that there was an extra person in the palace. This was a woman, so beautiful that her beauty wasn't inferior to that of the Empress or Huang at all. However, at this time her eyes were tightly closed, and there weren't any signs of life on her body. Xinghai knew that it wasn't that the other party had died, but that her consciousness had entered another world like his. She was fighting bitterly against 1,000,000 enemies all by herself. Xinghai couldn't help taking another glance at this woman. She was so beautiful that it would surely cause people to be intoxicated with her beauty. However, Xinghai immediately extracted himself, sat cross-legged, and attempted to comprehend the heavenly venerable seal in his consciousness. Time passed quietly. 1,000 years, 5,000 years. Nearly 10,000 years had passed, and Xinghai suddenly opened his eyes. He had completely mastered the 10th seal. When he channeled it, he found that his efficiency in cultivating had increased 17 times. This not only far surpassed the more widely known 7 seals, but also surpassed the 9th seal, which came from the fusion of the essence of countless 3rd-tier heavenly venerates. At this moment, there was a sudden movement of an incomparably powerful aura. Chapter 2818. 2818 Mysterious Beauty. Chapter 28:18. 28:18 Mysterious Beauty. 28:18 Mysterious Beauty. Ling Han suddenly looked at the other person in the palace. This huge, overwhelming, and indescribable aura came from this woman. She had passed the test, and her consciousness had returned to her body. Boom! The aura vibrated for a brief moment, and then completely returned to the woman's body, without leaking even a tiny bit of it. Although it was unleashed for just a split second before being drawn back again, Ling Han was extremely shocked. He already had a glimpse of the powerful nature of this woman. A fourth-tier heavenly venerate. No wonder she was able to break through the barricades set up by those three fourth-tier heavenly venerates outside. Being similarly at the fourth tier, if she was determined to break through, how could she be stopped by them? Moreover, Ling Han had a feeling that this woman's strength was far superior to an ordinary fourth tier's. Huang, the woman, opened her eyes, and the originally dark palace suddenly lit up. Partly because her eyes were too bright, and partly because of her beauty. From the moment she opened her eyes, it made her bloom like a flower, and she couldn't be more beautiful. Ling Han was also slightly distracted by it, but he quickly calmed down. It wasn't like he hadn't seen beautiful women before, and now his only thought was to improve his strength and cultivation. If one had beautiful wives, a loving son, and a loving daughter, what more could one ask for? The woman's gaze swept across the room, and she couldn't help revealing a surprised expression, as she really didn't expect that there was a living person inside. "Are you the one who entered here 10,000 years ago?" she asked. Her voice was soft, serene, and indescribably sweet. Ling Han shook his head. "Correction, that happened 20,000 years ago." The woman was taken aback for a moment, and then immediately came to her senses, judging from the changes in her body language. She couldn't help her pretty expression changing slightly. That was to say, in the last 10,000 years, she had been so defenseless in front of Ling Han. Did this guy do anything to her? Seeing this, Ling Han quickly waved his hand. "Don't get me wrong. If I had touched even a single strand of your hair, you could have felt it even if your mind had wandered to another world." The woman nodded slowly. Indeed, despite the fact that her consciousness had wandered away, her divine sense would definitely return at first instance should her body be in any danger. It was just that this test would end in failure. However, she still cast several glances towards Ling Han. This guy actually did not have any ideas towards her for the last 10,000 years, which was truly amazing. She had full confidence in her charm. What man wouldn't be tempted? Just this weird guy. "Since you've already woken up, why didn't you leave?" the woman asked. Ling Han shrugged and lifted both his hands. "It can't be helped, as I don't know how to get out of here." This was of course a lie. He hadn't even started looking for a way to leave this place. The woman's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. It was said that there was an inheritance from the ancient heavenly venerate located here. "Since you have arrived here one step ahead of me, I presume that you have obtained it?" "It wasn't me." Ling Han quickly shifted the blame completely. He couldn't possibly admit it. The other party was a fourth-tier heavenly venerate. If she knew that he had obtained the inheritance of the heavenly venerate, then wouldn't he be skinned alive? Of course, Ling Han was able to traverse between dimensions, so he wasn't too worried. However, he didn't want to take the risk of running into hysteria unless it was absolutely necessary. The woman seemed to have seen through Ling Han's thoughts and said, "Don't worry, even if you have obtained the inheritance, I will not seize it by force." For real? How generous. Being a fourth-tier heavenly venerate, she had the strength to seize it by force. Of course, Ling Han wouldn't ask this question. He merely chuckled and pretended not to have heard her. The woman didn't expose his lie. She merely searched around in the palace, and when she found that there was indeed no inheritance, she began to look for the exit. It didn't take long before she found it. This was a one-way exit. When the two walked in, schwa, they nevertheless appeared on the plain outside. With a wave of her hand, the woman left gracefully. Ling Han was shocked. The other party really just left like that. Hadn't she already guessed that he had obtained the inheritance, yet she was still being so generous? Inconceivable. Ling Han couldn't help but raise his voice and asked, "Who are you?" It was a pity that even when he shouted, his voice couldn't catch up with a fourth-tier heavenly venerate, and the woman disappeared into the distance in an instant. So intelligent, so forthright, and so powerful. Who exactly was she? Ling Han shook his head and chose to walk in the opposite direction from that stunningly beautiful woman. He changed his appearance and aura again. After all, he had tricked a lot of people previously, and he felt guilty. He was walking, and almost a day later he saw another huge tomb, which was still the same as the previous one, looking like a big bowl turned upside down. Ling Han quickly found the entrance, and after entering it, there was another plaza, which made him feel that he hadn't changed venues at all. There were still many people in the plaza. Most of them gathered around the entrance of the palace and lined up there. Ling Han walked over, looked for someone, and asked about the situation here with a smile. This was the Vermillion Bird Palace. Like the White Tiger Palace, there had originally been several fourth-tier heavenly venerates standing guard here to prevent others from entering. However, as time went by, more and more strong elites came, which broke this balance of power. However, like in the White Tiger Palace, there was no one here who could pass the test. Therefore, after a long time, those fourth-tier heavenly venerates also didn't want to expend such efforts, so everyone was allowed entry, while they went on to other palaces in search of another opportunity. There was also a test here, and the difficulty was similarly exceedingly high, and there was also an upper limit on the number of people that could be accommodated. Therefore, after the current number of people was full, other people wouldn't be able to enter, so they could only line up outside. Ling Han took a look. There were not many people in line, only a dozen or so. All right, he'd line up. He had always been a very rule-abiding person. Ling Han walked over, planning to get in line. Hey, this person is so outrageously brazen. Nothing more than a first tier. Where did he get such courage? Seeing Ling Han coming over in large strides, the surrounding people all gasped in amazement. Of course, Ling Han didn't care. He walked straight to the end of the line and stood still about 9 meters away from the person in front of him. He could not get too close, otherwise he would be mistaken for hostile by others. Unexpectedly, the person in front of him had other thoughts as he turned around and made a disdainful face at Ling Han. Ling Han instantly became unhappy. So what if you are a third tier? Do you think that I am afraid of you? What's your problem? Do I owe you anything? He also revealed a disdainful expression. Fuck, who didn't know how to show that? That third tier couldn't help sneering and said sternly, "You, a mere first tier, are really too bold. You really don't know what's good for you." Squinted eyes, can you speak properly? If you can't speak properly, let me educate you. Ling Han countered with a tit-for-tat reply. How could he be willing to suffer such maltreatment? Haha. That third tier snickered, but his gaze was incomparably chilly. Whose descendant are you? Don't you know that such arrogance will cause trouble for your clan? He didn't make a move, but asked this question because he was obviously fearful of Ling Han's background. After all, while most of the heavenly venerates have returned to their own dimensions, the high-level heavenly venerates basically stayed back. What if there was a 5th-tier or 6th-tier elite backing Ling Han? He surely didn't want to be hunted down all over the world by such an elite. Ling Han chuckled. I'll return the same words to you. That third tier had stopped laughing because the dozen or so third-tier elites in front of them were all smiling, obviously enjoying the sight of him being mocked. You're seeking death. Chapter 28:19, 28:19 You first. Chapter 28:19, 28:19 You first. 28:19 You first. This third-tier heavenly venerate moved aggressively, grabbing at Ling Han. Because he did not know how strong Ling Han's background was, he did not deliver a fatal attack, and merely wanted to capture Ling Han. Of course, if it was proven that Ling Han did not have any backer, or his backer was not strong, he would definitely kill Ling Han with a casual strike. He dared speak to a third-tier elite in this manner, so just this kind of attitude would warrant his death. Just look, how many people were laughing at him. He could not afford this embarrassment. Ling Han channeled the 10th seal, and his whole person instantly exuded an incredibly sharp killing intent, as if he had turned into the white tiger that was vicious and ruled over slaughter. His vicious might soared sky-high, the murderous aura even solidifying. Ling Han met this assault with a punch. Pung! The 10th seal added with the might of the fists of fury instantly burst out with incomparable power. A shock wave reverberated out, and Ling Han's figure trembled, but that 3rd tier heavenly venerate was directly sent flying. This? Everyone was dumbfounded. Were they dreaming? How could he be so powerful? Yet Ling Han himself was very clear. Though this 3rd tier heavenly venerate was not much inferior to him in terms of power, he had struck too casually and had not used any kind of heavenly venerable seal or secret technique. So how could he be able to block the might of Ling Han's punch? When did such a terrifying character appear? Someone murmured. He is practically a freak. Where did he pop out from? Ling Han flicked his hand and closely looked at the other members of this group. Only then did realization dawn on him. As it turned out, the people who were lining up here were all 3rd tier heavenly venerates. It should only be 3rd tiers that were worthy of lining up here. Once the 3rd tiers had their turn, then it would be the 2nd tiers, and then finally the 1st tiers. The hierarchy of the cultivation world was strict. A 2nd tier would crush a 1st tier, and a 3rd tier would also crush a 2nd tier, and that was what resulted in the present situation. Ling Han, a 1st tier, going to line up was equivalent to having broken the rules, so it was no wonder that he would be targeted. Since Ling Han had already made his move, he naturally would not be concerned further. He glanced at the remaining 10 plus 3rd tier heavenly venerates. Do you guys wish to battle me? None of these 3rd tiers replied. Fighting with Ling Han would only bring them losses, and there were no profits to be gained. Why was this so? If they won, wasn't it a matter of course for a 3rd tier to defeat a 1st tier heavenly venerate? There was nothing to be proud of in that. But if they lost, they would be utterly humiliated. A noble, dignified 3rd tier heavenly venerate had actually lost to a 1st tier heavenly venerate. Had they been living all this while for nothing? If this had been any other time before, they naturally wouldn't believe that there would be such a ridiculous thing. But a powerful feeling of alert now rose up in their hearts. This 1st tier was too freakish. Even if that 3rd tier had not unleashed his full strength because he had underestimated Ling Han, it still could not change the fact that Ling Han was powerful. Pung! A loud bang resounded, and a figure streaked over from the distance, landing heavily in the plaza and creating a powerful shock wave. Even 2nd tier heavenly venerates would have to go all out to be able to block the force of this shock wave, and 1st tier heavenly venerates were directly sent flying from the impact. It was that 3rd tier from before. He was extremely furious. To be sent flying by a 1st tier was an excruciating humiliation. You are courting death. Now, he did not care what kind of background Ling Han had. Even if the latter was the only son of a 7th tier heavenly venerate, he would still kill him without the slightest hesitation. Hee, you speak as if you have suffered some grievous wrong. Ling Han shook his head. Ask yourself first, do you have the right to feel angry? Die. That 3rd tier heavenly venerate charged out, a blurry seal glowing in his hand. This time, he naturally would not make the same mistake. He was using a heavenly venerable seal and secret technique at the same time. Ling Han still responded with the fists of fury and the 10th seal. He threw a punch, and the force of his punch actually turned into a white tiger that was several hundred meters in length, and pounced right on that 3rd tier heavenly venerate. Pung! That 3rd tier brandished a palm in response, but the white tiger seemed to be solid, and was actually pushing him backwards. Not only was he pushed back to his original position, he was still retreating further than that, showing the absolute disadvantage that he was at. Those 3rd tiers all narrowed their eyes at this. Ling Han's power was slightly stronger, and this was something they could accept, but what they could not accept was that Ling Han could actually force a 3rd tier backwards with an attack from a distance. This was too exaggerated. It would have to be a 4th tier, at least, that could have such overwhelming might. But if this really was a 4th tier that had struck, that 3rd tier would not have just been sent flying. Instead, even his body would have been blown up. This was not because Ling Han was overwhelmingly strong, but rather that the secret technique or the heavenly venerable seal he used had the ability to induce qualitative change, and that was why he was so inconceivably strong. Ling Han was also surprised. He had not thought that the 10th seal would have this effect. "Your temper is quite hot. Come and fight again." Ling Han crooked a finger at that third tier. That third tier's face was filled with fury. He wanted to accept the challenge, but when he thought about how he had not been a match for Ling Han even when he had gone all out, he would only be asking for his own humiliation if he made another move. His chest rose and fell rapidly, and after a long while, he clenched his fist, turned around, and sat down at the side, making no further noise. He would swallow this injustice, and he would accept this loss quietly. The other third tiers exchanged looks, and one of them suddenly spoke up and said, "Young friend's natural talent and cultivation is truly shocking and has truly impressed us. Thus, we are willing to let young friend be the first in line." "Oh, so nice of them." Ling Han thought for a moment and then replied, "Then thank you." He walked to the foremost position and waited quietly. After several days, a figure appeared in a flash, and there was another person here. This was a third-tier heavenly venerate. His expression was filled with disappointment. He shook his head and immediately strode off without addressing anyone. He had failed the test. Ling Han leaped and had already entered through the light door. Instantly, he realized that he had entered into a different area. With the experience at the White Tiger Palace, Ling Han immediately realized that this was his spirit that had entered into another space. His true body should have already entered into the palace, but if he failed to pass the test, he would be expelled, just like that third tier from before. He surveyed the area. This was a land of fire. The Vermillion bird was aligned with fire, so it was not unexpected for such an environment to appear. However, both White Tiger and Vermillion bird primarily focused on offense. It was only that the White Tiger was aligned with metal and represented sharpness capable of piercing through any enemy, while the Vermillion bird represented fire that could burn through anything. "Fine, then I will just fight to my heart's content again." Boom. The flames surged, transforming into a single word, kill. In the test at the White Tiger Palace, one could never step back, and here it had become a simple word, kill. So how intensely did he have to kill? Boom, boom, boom. The ground trembled wildly, and an incredibly colossal metallic figure appeared ahead of him. It was 300 meters tall and seemed to be forged from metal. It had no eyes or mouth, and its face was just a blank slate. It soon reached Ling Han and directly stretched out its arm to press down on him. It was too massive. The descent of this strike was as if a small mountain was falling down on him, golden light seeping about. Ling Han unleashed a battle cry, and still met this oncoming strike with fists of fury. He had yet to advance it to third tier, and needed this kind of intense battle to increase his fist intent. Pong! He received this attack, and the metallic figure's body trembled, instantly crumbling and turning into countless pieces. However, this was only for an instant. These pieces immediately joined back together, reforming its body. Boom! This metallic figure sent out a strike again. Huh! It could not be killed. Ling Han raised his fist once more and sent the metallic figure flying again. Boom! In midair, the metallic figure's body was once again shattered, but similarly, it immediately recovered again. Chapter 2820, 2820 Vermillion Bird Seal. Chapter 2820, 2820 Vermillion Bird Seal. 2820 Vermillion Bird Seal. Ling Han frowned. Though he had still destroyed the metallic figure with a single strike, its power was increasing. It was at the first tier the first time, but now it was at the second tier. Boom! The metallic figure attacked for the third time. It was still a palm strike descending straight down on Ling Han. Golden light flashed, wanting to smash him dead. Ling Han replied with a punch. Boom! Amidst a massive bang, the metallic figure actually managed to parry Ling Han's strike. This was third-tier power. Pong, pong, pong. The metallic figure brandished both fists madly, continuously barraging Ling Han. Its speed was astonishingly fast, as if it was able to topple mountains and overturn seas. It was slowly adapting to the power of the challenger. After every time it was killed, its power would increase by another level, and if it could continue to be strengthened like this, how could it be killed? Ling Han set this thought aside first and pounded this guy madly. Since he had yet to advance the Fists of Fury to the 3rd tier, he might as well temper and practice well with this guy. The two men fought intensely. This metallic figure's attacks were slightly mechanical and stuck to certain patterns. Hence, in less than 15 minutes, Ling Han punched his fist right through its chest, creating a hole directly in its chest. It quickly recovered, its fists smashing down madly. Its power had shockingly increased slightly again. Fortunately, the degree of its improvement was not very large, and it had not directly crossed the boundaries of the 4th tier. Instead, it had reached an extent that just slightly surpassed Ling Han. This made the battle become even more intense, but Ling Han was a real person, after all. After 30 minutes, he once again found an opening and killed this metallic figure. As expected, it naturally recovered once more. Fight, 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 fight. Every time it was killed by Ling Han, the metallic figure would grow slightly stronger, making it harder and harder to kill. This was exactly what Ling Han wanted to practice his fist technique. He, too, needed an opponent that could match him. In the White Tiger Palace, the number of enemies was adequate, and here the enemy was strong enough for him. Kill, kill, kill. He killed the metallic figure time after time, but the metallic figure was also becoming stronger and stronger, and its counterattacks became more and more powerful. 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, and finally 700 years later, though Ling Han was still able to kill the metallic figure, the time he needed was increasing further and further. Moreover, he would have to pay an exorbitant price for it as well. More importantly, the metallic figure would immediately recover after it was killed, and Ling Han was not given the opportunity to recover at all. Once or twice, this would be fine, but after several dozen, and over 100 times later, the pressure on Ling Han was also extremely heavy. Ling Han was sure that this test was definitely not a matter of how long they could last. Otherwise, he would only have to drag out the battle with the metallic figure from before when it had not been so strong. What this test was focused on was killing. Just how many kills would be considered a pass? Ling Han did not know. He could only kill the metallic figure again and again, and perhaps he would be able to pass the test this time. Or perhaps he still needed another 100 times, another 1,000 times, or 10,000 times. There really was not the slightest hope. Similar to the White Tiger Palace, it was very likely that one would lose all fighting spirit as the battles continued and give up. Ling Han did not. The strength of his willpower and fighting spirit was something that no one could imagine. He simply continued to temper fists of fury again and again, and after over 100,000 years had passed, he had a feeling that there was an opening that he was faced with now. If he could reach this opening, the Fists of Fury could advance to the 3rd tier. If so, he would just fight to his heart's content. With a battle cry, he attacked madly. Pong, pong, pong. Very quickly, the metallic figure was killed again. However, it immediately made a comeback and became even more frightening. What Ling Han wanted was precisely that his opponent was strong. If his opponent was not strong enough, it would be very hard for him to break through his own limits. Come at me. Pong. However, the metallic figure's battle prowess was already tremendously close to the 4th tier this time, and it turned around to suppress Ling Han. In an exchange of strikes, Ling Han felt his arms tremble in pain and twist unbelievably. His arms were broken, but he did not even grunt. With sheer strength of mind, power surged into him, and forcefully righted his arms as he clashed with the metallic figure again. Ling Han yelled, his power blazing and fighting spirit soaring. Pong, pong, pong. In a single stroke, he delivered several thousand punches and instantly shattered that metallic figure. He laughed loudly. His Fists of Fury had finally been advanced to the 3rd tier, and that was what allowed him to unleash such great might. However, he looked at his hands, and both his fists were gone. They had been destroyed in that intense clash from before. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, and his hands immediately grew back rapidly. However, the metallic figure did not come back to life again this time. Ling Han faltered, and then felt that he was being guided by great power. Huang. He appeared inside a palace. Boom. The power inside his body boiled, making him feel like he was newly born. He had passed the test, so his spirit had returned to his body, creating an explosion of power. Ling Han looked into his body and discovered that his cultivation level had increased by a particular amount again, but this time he had only spent over 100,000 years in the spiritual world, so there was naturally not much time that had passed in the real world. Hence, his cultivation level had only increased a slight amount. Ling Han was not concerned, because Fists of Fury had already reached the 3rd tier, and was worthy of his battle prowess now. Furthermore, Fists of Fury was a cultivation technique that belonged to him completely, which was more useful than any heavenly venerate technique that anyone had taught him. Ling Han was sure that this was the best heavenly venerate technique for him on the level of the 3rd tier. Huang. A golden bone suddenly appeared ahead of him. This should be a hip bone, and there was a blurred seal on it. His inheritance was here. Ling Han stretched out his hand to touch it. Boom. Instantly, a seal flashed in his mind, as if countless flames were burning, wanting to turn his mind into a sea of fire. The heavenly venerate 4 directions' voice rang out again, and the words he said were the exact same words that he had said in the White Tiger Palace. Ling Han began to study this seal. The time needed for this was very long. 10,000 years passed, and he finally stood up, a smile appearing on his face. 11th seal. Got it. With the boost from this seal, the speed of Ling Han's cultivation could increase to 17 times, which was equivalent to the 10th seal's effect. The heavenly venerate 4 directions has said that with the 4 seals merged into one could learn a secret technique of his. However, that mysterious woman had been able to pass through the White Tiger Palace, so she may also be able to pass through Azure Dragon Palace and Black Tortoise Palace. Judging by the direction that she had taken, she should have gone to the Azure Dragon Palace one. If she has taken the seal from the Azure Dragon Palace, then even if I manage to obtain the remaining seal in the Black Tortoise Palace, it will still be impossible for me to learn that secret technique. Too bad, too bad. Ling Han shook his head. Though this heavenly venerable seal could be severed by its master, that was done with the price of ripping off a corner of their own mind. For heavenly venerates, that was still a severe injury. Whatever offer he made, it was probably impossible that that woman would surrender the Azure Dragon seal to him. Moreover, she was a 4th tier, and an extremely powerful 4th tier at that. If he really dared to raise this issue, she might turn around and refine him instead. Similarly, she would also be able to obtain the seals of the 4 directions and obtain that secret technique. Let's go to the Black Tortoise Palace. Ling Han stood up, and after finding the exit, he immediately left. Then, after distinguishing his directions, he headed towards the Black Tortoise Palace. Not much longer afterwards, he saw the 3rd burial mound. He entered, his eyes sweeping over his surroundings. He saw that there were still many people gathered at the plaza, but this was very similar to the White Tiger Palace. Everyone was not lining up, but rather scattered in 2s and 3s, looking towards the entrance into the palace. There was someone sealing off the entrance there as well. Chapter 28-21. 28-21 Number 1 Prodigy? Chapter 28-21. 28-21 Number 1 Prodigy. 28-21 Number 1 Prodigy. Ling Han sighed. Why did people keep doing this kind of thing? He made some queries, and as it turned out, these were not the first people to seal off the entrance. 30,000 years ago, there were already 4th-tier elites sealing off the entrance here, but as their disciples and descendants arrived, and were unable to pass the test after all of them had made an attempt, these 4th tiers left helplessly, switching to another palace to try again. However, after this batch of people left, not many centuries passed before a different batch of 4th-tier elites blocked the entrance. They, too, had their descendants and disciples that were making their way here. Ling Han shook his head. There really was no end to this. This also showed how valuable a heavenly venerable seal was. If a fourth tier could not obtain it for themselves, they could place their hopes on their descendants and disciples. In fact, they could even forcefully extract it from them once the latter had obtained it. With the temptation of heavenly venerable seal, what could not be discarded? In Ling Han's heart, family was of the utmost importance, but in the eyes of the majority of heavenly venerates, increasing their own strength was the only thing that mattered to them. Ling Han's gaze wandered around. He was looking for Ping Xinghai to see if he could trick him again. His gaze searched all around, and he couldn't help but sigh. Ping Xinghai wasn't here. If Ping Xinghai knew about this, he would probably curse fluidly. "You are really hanging on to me, aren't you? What to do now?" After passing 2 tests and obtaining the inheritance comprising 2 heavenly venerable seals, Ling Han was sure that he would definitely be able to obtain the heavenly venerable seal inside the Black Tortoise Palace, but if he couldn't enter, then there was no need to even mention it. He thought long and hard, but the number of 4th tiers that were blocking the entrance had reached as many as 7. Even if Ping Xinghai had really come, and Ling Han had managed to successfully trick him into doing the same thing again, the chances of his being able to sneak in through the chaos would have been close to 0. Moreover, would Ping Xinghai be tricked again after falling for Ling Han's trick before? He was not that stupid. Ling Han decided he'd just wait and see. Ling Han sat down at one side. He would definitely not give up the chance of obtaining this heavenly venerable seal. As he sat, another 2 years passed. In this period, a great many people had come and left. Some veterans left helplessly, and some rookies, relying on their master and clan background, wanted to approach to ask for mercy, but they were all refused, and no one could enter into the palace. A thought suddenly flashed in Ling Han's mind, and his eyes snapped open abruptly. Here was another person. This was a mighty figure, a frightening aura exuding from him, turning into flames that unfurled around him. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily narrowed. This was someone familiar. Zhuang Fairway. When a heavenly venerable seal had appeared, even if some people got the news later than others, as long as they got wind of the news, they would definitely come to take a look. Close to 1 million years had passed, and Zhuang Fairway's aura had become more stable and frightening. Clearly, his battle prowess had improved considerably. He was a naturally gifted prodigy. In the past, he was known as the strongest prodigy. It was only afterwards, when he was trapped in the 2nd spatial level, that everyone thought he had died, and with the abrupt appearance of people like Lin Yulian and Xian Chihu, he was gradually forgotten. However, his strength could not be denied. At present, he was definitely an overlord among 4th tiers, and there were few that could match him. As he headed straight for the entrance of the palace, it seemed like there was lightning flashing with every step he took. Ling Han's eyes lit up. This was an opportunity. He moved quietly and very carefully because once Zhuang Fairway discovered his presence, the latter would definitely turn around to suppress him first. "Stop, my friend." A 4th tier stretched out his hand and pressed downwards. Scram! Zhuang Fairway was extremely domineering. Within 4th tier, there was no need for him to pay anyone any regard. If he didn't like the looks of them, he would move directly. He was invincible. "You have gone too far," another 4th tier said. "If you guys don't scram, I'll send you flying." Zhuang Fairway moved directly, charging towards those 7 4th tier elites. "How dare you?" Those 7 4th tiers all humphed angrily. "You are too arrogant, aren't you?" Being able to advance to the heavenly venerable tier, which of them was not a gifted prodigy? There was already no such thing as differences between king tiers and monarch tiers. If their cultivation level was completely equal, battle prowess should be equal as well. Isn't fighting against 7 all alone just asking for a beating? The 7 4th tier elites all humphed coldly and moved to suppress Zhuang Fairway. Pong, pong, pong. The 8 of them fought intensely, and what caused everyone's jaws to drop in absolute shock and astonishment was that not only had Zhuang Fairway not fallen into a disadvantage, he had an absolute upper hand. Impossible. Everyone was dumbfounded. 7 4th tiers, all of them at peak stage 4th tier at that, combined their efforts, and actually were no match for a single 4th tier. It should be known that Zhuang Feirui was only a middle stage 4th tier at best, and it was possible that he had not attained that level yet. How could he be so strong? This is a supreme prodigy, someone exclaimed shakily. Who is this guy? You guys don't even know who he is? Zhuang Feirui, the #1 prodigy of several epochs ago. What? It's actually him? Why did I hear that he had died a long time ago? That's right. I also heard that he had died. Died? He had only been a 3rd tier then, but he had been trapped for several epochs in a danger zone of the realm battlefield. Not only had he not died, he had even advanced further and stepped into the 4th tier. That is too amazing. Of course, as expected of the #1 prodigy, everyone was exclaiming in shock, and amidst their surprised exclamations, Zhuang Feirui was also defeating those 7 4th tiers in a clean sweep. Gathering several dozen powers of dimension when he had been a 1st tier was an advantage that would be eternally maintained by any 1st tier. However, the higher the cultivation level, the further this advantage would be considerably weakened. It could not be helped. Aside from Xinghai, others would only consolidate their power of dimensions into a core, which had limited growth. Zhuang Feirui swept his eyes over his surroundings, appearing insufferably arrogant. He had the right to do that because he was the #1 prodigy, who was unmatched among his equals. Who would be able to match him? Show off, Xinghai inwardly said. This guy had probably forgotten how he had been harshly thrashed by Xinghai in a battle of equal cultivation levels, hadn't he? However, without the suppression of cultivation level, Zhuang Feirui was indeed overwhelmingly strong. Without anyone at or above the 5th tier, who would be capable of suppressing him? A figure entered from the entrance, revealing an extremely beautiful and graceful outline. This was an exquisite beauty. Even if everyone here were heavenly venerates, they still had their breaths taken away upon their first glimpse of her. Yet Xinghai's eyes narrowed. This was shockingly that mysterious woman from the White Tiger Palace, who had been inconceivably strong. She had already obtained the inheritance of the Azure Dragon Palace. She definitely had, or it was impossible that she would have taken so much time to make it here. This exquisite beauty walked gracefully and elegantly. She seemed to be walking lightly and extremely relaxedly, but her speed was considerably fast. Very soon, she drew near to the doors of the palace. Zhuang Feirui glanced over, revealing a hint of displeasure. He did very much admire this beauty's exquisite appearance, but didn't she know the rule, first come, first served? He had just overthrown those bullies blocking the doorway, and she simply wanted to come and reap the benefits without saying a word. Zhuang Feirui stretched out his arm to stop her. Friend, don't you think that you should ask me for my opinion first? That mysterious woman's steps paused momentarily. An ancient historical site is not something that belongs to anyone, so why do I need to ask permission from you? Zhuang Feirui's eyes sharpened. Friend, you have gone too far. He had always been the overbearing type. Even if this woman was incomparably beautiful, so what? If she went against his will, he would mercilessly suppress her anyway. This was a chance. Xinghai moved silently. He, for one, knew that this mysterious woman was extremely powerful. At the very least, she would not be weaker than Zhuang Feirui. If the two of them started to battle, that would be the best chance for him to slip into the palace. That exquisite beauty ignored Zhuang Feirui completely and walked delicately and gracefully, continuing on her way. Chapter 28-22. 28-22 There was no comparison at all. Chapter 28-22. 28-22 There was no comparison at all. 28-22 There was no comparison at all. Humph! Zhuang Feirui reached out and tried to grab the stunning beauty. Pung! The stunning beauty gave a light wave of her hand, yet it caused a surge of incomparably terrifying power, and Zhuang Feirui was sent flying and became a small in an instant, vanishing from sight. Everyone gaped and was speechless, as if they had seen a ghost. This had to be fake, right? Zhuang Feirui was already so powerful, having suppressed 7 4th-tier heavenly venerates solely with his own strength. However, when faced with this stunning beauty, he wasn't her match at all. This woman, what kind of monster was she? Ling Han was also taken aback. He had known that this woman had been extremely strong, but he had never imagined her to be this strong. Although she has achieved such a feat, this stunning beauty didn't seem to care, as if she was just brushing off some dust. Instead, she glanced around, and her gaze locked on Ling Han very quickly. Ling Han suddenly felt like he was a mouse being watched by a cat, which caused him to feel a cold chill running through his body. This woman was indeed too strong. "Why sneak around?" the woman said, and made a gesture of invitation towards the revolving doorway of light. Ling Han was surprised. "Aren't you afraid that I'll get my hands on the heavenly venerable seal first before you do?" However, when the other party had already invited him in such a manner, how could he bring himself to back down? He took large strides and walked towards the doorway of light. Zhuang Feirui flew back from a distance. Immediately, he gritted his teeth and said, "Ling Han." He was a 4th tier, and he could see through Ling Han's disguise at a glance. He wanted to make a move, but when the stunning beauty turned her gaze towards him, it caused him to come to a halt. The opponent was at the peak of the 4th tier, and was even more freakish than him. There was no telling how many powers of dimension she had condensed. It was definitely not something he could match. If he was to step forward to battle, he would be bringing humiliation upon himself. Damn it, there was a heavenly venerable seal this man possessed, which Zhuang Feirui absolutely had to get his hands on. Moreover, Ling Han also caused his reputation to hit rock bottom. If he couldn't kill Ling Han, it would be a stigma that would follow him for life. Ling Han walked over with a smile and said, "Miss, do you intend to compete with me?" Unexpectedly, the stunning beauty actually nodded. "That's right." "Okay," Ling Han boldly agreed. A woman like herself actually possessed such a gallant spirit. She obviously could have driven him away, or at least grabbed the first opportunity, but instead gave him a chance to compete fairly. If Ling Han hadn't even dared to accept the challenge, then he would have been a man in vain. The two stepped forward together. Shio, they entered the doorway of light. As soon as this stunning beauty left, everyone finally came back to their senses and relaxed themselves after being in the midst of that extremely oppressive aura. "This woman, who was she really?" someone murmured. "She's extremely formidable indeed, being able to send even a first-rate prodigy such as Zhuang Feirui flying with a single palm strike. Is there really such a person in the world?" The oppressive atmosphere gradually disappeared, and everyone was full of curiosity about who such a powerful woman was. "Do you really want to know who she is?" someone suddenly said leisurely. Immediately, everyone's gaze turned in the direction of the voice. Even Zhuang Feirui was no exception, as he really wanted to know the identity of this woman. "She is Vermillion." Gasp. Everyone gasped. If Zhuang Feirui was only the #1 prodigy of his era, then Vermillion was the greatest prodigy of all time. Only Xian Shihu could rival her. Of course, there was another Wu Haoyang after him. In comparison, Zhuang Feirui was absolutely nothing. Vermillion. I didn't expect that. Not only is her strength earth-shattering, even her appearance is so beautiful as well. If I could take her as my wife, someone began to let their imagination run wild. The greatest prodigy of all eternity. She truly lives up to the name. Even Zhuang Feirui had nothing further to say. Vermillion wasn't merely of a slightly higher level than him, but also far superseded him in terms of natural talent for cultivation. What else could he do besides resigning himself to the situation when faced with such an existence? Who would be capable of having such a beautiful prodigy in his embrace? Zhuang Feirui stepped out and entered the doorway of light without hesitation. His natural talent and strength were indeed not as good as Vermillion's, but great opportunities weren't something one could definitely obtain by being strong. Ling Han found himself in a plane again, but the stunning beauty was nowhere to be seen. This was within the spiritual world, so it was normal not to have the existence of the other party. The bodies of both parties should be in the hall right now. There was a flag in the plane, with only one word written on it, defend. Ling Han knew that this was Black Tortoise Palace, so the test had to be related to defense. What could it be? A feeling of danger suddenly tugged at his heart. All of a sudden, he looked up and saw a large stretch of meteors falling from the sky, smashing towards him. It was really a massive stretch, covering the entire area. There was nowhere to hide. Ling Han hastened to use the fists of fury, blasting towards the sky. Pong, pong, pong. The meteors were shattered into pieces. These pieces were shattered before they fell onto him. The first round of attacks had been perfectly resolved. However, right on the heels of the earlier attack, another large wave of meteors came crashing down, this time with even more force. Ling Han thought of the test at Vermillion Bird Hall. He knew that these attacks would increase in level gradually, in search of his limit, and then would start bombarding wildly within the scope of his limit. This was the real test. He easily resolved this wave, but after several waves of meteors falling, he was also being pushed to his limit. At this time, even if he blasted with fists of fury, there was no way for him to completely resolve the situation. Furthermore, there were great numbers of meteors crashing down violently, which forced him to channel the indestructible Heaven Scroll to take the attack head-on. This was the main idea of Black Tortoise Palace's test, to take on a beating. Hong, long, long. More meteors fell, turning into an endless catastrophe. Ling Han had noble ideals, and he didn't believe that he couldn't stop it. Come! Meteors turned into a rain of meteors, coming wave after wave, and requiring him to go all out in resistance. In the face of such an attack, Ling Han was not qualified to fight back, so he could only channel the indestructible Heaven Scroll. However, the indestructible Heaven Scroll was only created by a first tier, and had huge limitations. Then again, what could be better than the indestructible Heaven Scroll as far as defense was concerned? While taking on the beating, Ling Han was also comprehending and improving the deficiencies in the indestructible Heaven Scroll to adapt it to his current battle prowess. Hong, long, long. The meteor rain seemed to never stop, one wave after another intending to blast Ling Han to pieces. This was the most annoying part. If one could know how many waves one would need to bear to end it, then at least there would still be hope. But what about now? It could be over right after the next wave. Or it could be that one would have to bear tens of thousands of waves more, which was enough to make someone with a strong willpower give up. Ling Han gritted his teeth and continued to persevere. This wasn't a battle, but rather taking a beating, which wasn't in line with his path of cultivation, but for the sake of the heavenly venerable seal and all the more to test his resilience, he was unwilling to back down. As time passed, Ling Han continued to deepen his study of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, but this indestructible Heaven Scroll wasn't created by him, and it was improving far from as quickly as fists of fury. This time, what Ling Han really depended on was his willpower. He kept roaring as meteors hit him one after another. It really hurt. 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years. It was not until 300,000 years had passed that Ling Han suddenly felt his whole body relax, and then found himself appearing in another place. He had passed the test. At the same time, a strong aura immediately arose from his surroundings, just like a violent storm. Vermillion had also passed the test. Ling Han couldn't help but be filled with admiration. Such a stunning beauty could also withstand the bombardment of 300,000 years. Her willpower was truly amazing. Chapter 28-23, 28-23 Combining the Seals. Chapter 28-23, 2,823 Combining the Seals. 28-23 Combining the Seals. There were only the two of them in the hall. Ling Han wasn't surprised. Even if someone came in halfway, they couldn't resist the impact of the meteor rain, so they were disqualified earlier. Huang, a leg bone appeared, entirely pale golden in color, with a vague flickering seal on it. Ling Han stretched out his hand and pressed it on the leg bone. At the same time, Lin Yulian also stretched out her slender hand and touched the leg bone. A ray of light burst out, and the leg bone emitted an overwhelming brilliance. But this was not all. Ling Han's and Lin Yulian's mind shone brightly as well. Huang, Huang, Huang. 3 seals rose from the crown of their respective heads. One turned into a white tiger, one turned into a vermilion bird, and one turned into an azure dragon, while the light rising from the leg bone also turned into a black tortoise. Ling Han couldn't help being stunned. Wasn't it that a heavenly venerable seal could only be transmitted and not passed on as an inheritance? But he could clearly sense the azure dragon seal and was able to completely grasp it. This is a combination seal. Lin Yulian started speaking. When there is resonance between the 4 seals, then it would materialize, but it is only limited to a duration when the seal of the black tortoise hasn't dissipated. She paused for a moment and then added, "Hurry up and comprehend it. There's not much time." Ling Han quickly regained his composure. Who cared what the reason was? His priority now was to master the 2 seals of the azure dragon and black tortoise. Both of them sat down cross-legged, imprinting the heavenly venerable seals firmly in their minds. 3 days later, the golden leg bone disintegrated into specks of light before vanishing without a trace. However, Ling Han revealed a look of satisfaction as he had imprinted the 2 seals of azure dragon and black tortoise in his mind. He didn't dare to be careless and began studying them again. The same was true for Lin Yulian. She had a bigger task at hand as she needed to comprehend 3 seals. Time passed quietly, and soon it was already 20,000 years later. Ling Han opened his eyes. He had already mastered all 4 direction seals. A single seal could increase his cultivation speed by 17 times, and it was the same for the increase in battle prowess. Moreover, the 4 seals could actually be channeled simultaneously in battle, which would be terrifying indeed as it would cause his power to soar by 39 times. What was going on here? If the 4 seals could be superimposed, shouldn't it be 68 times? What was the meaning of this 39 times? Moreover, the effects of heavenly venerable seals couldn't be superimposed. No matter how many seals were being channeled, the one which could truly exert its power would be the strongest one. This ought to be related to combination seals, right? Ling Han thought of what Lin Yulian had said before and was absolutely confident in his theory, but the other party was still in the midst of meditation with her eyes closed. It would be impossible for him to wake up the other party to pose his query, thereby interrupting the other party's comprehension. This would be creating a deadly feud. Moreover, it seemed that Lin Yulian had long expected that they would jointly unlock the 4th heavenly venerable seal, which would allow both of them to master the 4 direction seals. So that was the reason why the other party had especially invited Ling Han to enter the doorway of light together and to take on the test at the same time, completely in synchrony. Ling Han thought about it and decided to continue meditating while waiting for Lin Yulian as he wanted clarification. Of course, he wouldn't waste time, because the heavenly venerate 4 directions had said that if he could master all the 4 seals, he would be able to comprehend a unique skill contained within them. Ling Han started to make deductions. Soon, he had some clues and was slowly making progress. After 9,000 years had passed, Ling Han stood up abruptly and then punched out. Boom! Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermillion Bird, and Black Tortoise all appeared and charged forward. As the 4 forms materialized, power soared exponentially. Ling Han channeled the 4 direction seals and simultaneously punched out for the second time. This time, the extraordinary sight was even more astonishing. It was as though all 4 divine beasts had solidified, bearing a massive destructive aura. When this secret technique and the 4 direction seals are being channeled at the same time, the power released is truly amazing. Ling Han was filled with admiration. This was the ultimate technique created by a 5th-tier heavenly venerate, so it could be used at least up to the battle prowess of a 5th tier. However, my true support would be the Fists of Fury, which must not be discarded. While waiting, Ling Han practiced the fist technique. After another millennium had passed, Lin Yulian finally woke up from her state of meditation. If you have any questions, just ask. Where I'm capable of answering, I will do my best to answer. This was the first sentence that the woman said, as if she had read Ling Han's mind. It really wasn't good for a woman to be so smart. It would cause a man not to have any sense of accomplishment. Ling Han chuckled. Miss, if I may ask, what is a combination seal? According to my father's statistics, there are a total of 999 heavenly venerable seals. If they can be fully mastered and formed into sequences, then each seal can resonate with one another and exert unimaginable power, Lin Yulian said. She paused slightly, and then said, however, even if you don't master all these seals, but have obtained the adjacent seals, they can still resonate and give rise to amplification of power. It's just that the effect will be slightly inferior. Ling Han gave an O and nodded. No wonder his strength wasn't increased by 68 times when he had channeled the 4 direction seals simultaneously, but rather 39 times over. He was stumped for words. If he could further obtain adjacent seals, then wouldn't his battle prowess be increased 50 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times? You guessed it right, Lin Yulian said. So, even if you have the same number of heavenly venerable seals, and they are of the same level, but one party's seals are a series, while the others are not, there will be a huge difference in battle prowess between the two. She glanced at Ling Han and added, since I started this, I will simply explain some more. The 999 heavenly venerable seals are divided into 9 levels, and each level has 111 seals. My father proceeded to sort them. The first level of heavenly venerable seals can increase battle prowess by about 4 to 10 times. The second level, between 11 and 20 times. Going by the same logic, the 9th level will reach between 81 and 90 times. However, don't think that low-level seals are useless. Lin Yulian looked solemn. Due to the continuity and ability of combination of the heavenly venerable seals, we absolutely mustn't ignore any of the heavenly venerable seals. Moreover, even if it is a low-level seal, as long as it can be combined, the power upon being channeled together cannot be underestimated. Ling Han nodded. His eyes were really open today. In his thoughts, he was becoming more and more curious about the identity of this stunning beauty. What was her background, and how did she come to know so many secrets? He couldn't help asking, Miss, if I may ask, have we met before? Being a dignified 4th tier, much less someone who could suppress a super genius like Zhuang Ferrue, why would she behave so courteously to a 1st tier like Ling Han? Lin Yulian smiled faintly. My father and brother think very highly of brother Lin. Ling Han was taken aback for a moment, and suddenly a conjecture surged in his heart. He said, You are Lin Yulian. Besides this prodigious woman, who else could suppress Zhuang Ferrue with one move? Apart from Lin Luo, how many other people would know that there were 999 heavenly venerable seals in the Genesis world, and would even know about such secrets as the combination seals? Lin Yulian smiled faintly. Correct? It was indeed as expected. Ling Han nodded and sighed inwardly. He owed the Lin clan another favor. Brother Ling, senior brother Zhou Hong has already told my father about your conjecture. My father actually has the same idea, but no one is hysteria, so it is impossible to know how far it can go, Lin Yulian said with a solemn voice. My father asked me to send word to brother Ling to persist in your efforts and keep climbing to the top. In the future, you will definitely be an important link in quelling the disaster brought about by hysteria. Chapter 28-24. 28-24 Good times don't last long? Chapter 28-24. 2,824 Good times don't last long. 28-24 Good times don't last long? Ling Han felt extremely flattered by the praise. A paramount 7th tier heavenly venerate saw such promise in him. During Ling Han's time in the realm battlefield, Lin Luo had already thought highly of him and been optimistic about his future. As such, he had given Ling Han quite a bit of help. Meanwhile, his 3 disciples Zhou Hong, Chu Hao, and Lin Xiaoyang and his son had further provided Ling Han with a lot of help. It was thanks to Ling Han's time cultivating at the Lin clan that he was able to reach the 8th heaven at such a lightning-quick speed. I must express my sincere gratitude to Senior Lin, Ling Han said. Keep up the good work. I also have high hopes for you, Lin Yulian said with a nod. There was a look of encouragement on her face. She paused for a moment before saying, "Let's go." The two of them quickly found an exit. Upon stepping through it, they immediately found themselves in a vast plain. Lin Yulian waved her hand before gracefully disappearing into the distance. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Was there a man who could capture the attention of this fairy-like woman? He shook his head and pushed away these thoughts. This had nothing to do with him. He already had a warm and loving family. Ling Han left the ancient tomb. Regardless of whether it was the heavenly venerable seals or the secret technique concealed within it, he had already obtained them all. Thus, was there any need to stay? Moreover, his identity had already been exposed, so it was certain that many elites had their sights set on him. As such, his best option was to leave. After arriving back at the world's paramount martial academy, Ling Han reunited with the Empress and the others. After all, they had already agreed to gather there if they were separated from each other in the ancient tomb. None of the others had gained anything from this trip. However, after learning that Ling Han had obtained all 4 of the heavenly venerable seals, they all felt extremely happy for him. It was a shame, though, that Ling Han couldn't teach the 4 forms technique to the others, as this required the support of 4 heavenly venerable seals. Without these seals, all attempts would be futile. "Let's go, let's visit our daughter," Ling Han said with a smile. He and the Empress changed their appearance a bit before entering the martial academy. However, after walking around the entire martial academy, they discovered that their daughter still had yet to return. Ling Han couldn't help but feel a little worried. His daughter was far too beautiful, so what would happen if she encountered a man with impure motives? He clearly knew that Ling Shi possessed power that could rival pseudo-heavenly venerates, yet he still felt extremely worried at this moment. This was his worry as a father. "I can't help but feel worried," Ling Han said. "I need to look for her." The Empress felt much more relaxed and at ease than him, but since Ling Han had decided to look for his daughter, she naturally wouldn't be against it. They set off to look for Ling Shi. Several years later, they arrived at a small town. According to some records, Ling Shi had once stayed here 7 years ago. They were very close to finding their daughter. From what I've gathered, Ling Shi was searching for the treasures of an ancient celestial king. This is the most likely location, so why don't we wait here? We might come across her at any moment, Ling Han said. The Empress nodded in agreement. They settled down, waiting to reunite with their daughter. Ling Han now possessed 13 heavenly venerable seals, and if he channeled them together, his cultivation speed could be increased 109-fold. This seemed astounding. However, taking into account the boundless powers of dimension within him, this speed was in fact still very slow. At the very least, the cultivation speed of the Empress was far quicker than his. Right now, she had already reached the late stage of the first tier, and wasn't far from reaching the peak stage. As for Ling Han, he had only just discovered the path to reach the middle stage. However, it would still be quite a long time until he actually reached it. Oh, heavenly venerable seals. He still needed many, many more of them. As they waited, 37 years passed. This wasn't a very long time. After all, spending tens of thousands of years on some random adventure was nothing in the eyes of Ling Han. On this day, astonishing thunder and lightning suddenly boomed through heaven and earth, causing the ground to quake and making it seem like the sky was about to collapse. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open, and he gazed into the distance. It was as if nothing could escape his gaze, no matter how far. A smile spread across his face. However, his expression quickly froze, and it appeared indescribably strange. Every father who had experienced his daughter marrying would understand what this expression represented. Little she has a companion, the Empress said. She could also see Ling Shi flying toward the small town. However, she wasn't alone, and there was an elegant-looking man next to her. He appeared handsome and extraordinary. This bastard, Ling Han murmured. He felt a murderous urge. It wasn't long before Ling Shi and the man arrived above the small town. The Empress reached out with her divine sense, causing Ling Shi to instantly stop in her tracks. What's wrong, junior sister Ling? The young man asked. Ling Shi wore a surprised expression as she replied, My mother's here. Oh. The young man hurriedly nodded before saying, Then we must pay auntie a visit. The two of them descended, landing before the inn that Ling Han and the Empress were staying in. The Empress walked out first. They hadn't seen their daughter for many years, so even with her aloof personality, she still missed her a little. Mom! Ling Shi exclaimed as she jumped into the Empress' embrace. After so many years, she had already grown up and become a young lady whose beauty was in no way inferior to the Empress. Standing together, they were like two lotuses who were equally beautiful and equally breathtaking. The Empress lightly stroked her daughter's head. As for the young man, she completely ignored him. To say nothing of the fact that he had no intimate relationship with Ling Shi, even if they were married, the Empress would still definitely ignore him. There was zero possibility that she would like him the more that she looked at him. Mom, where's Dad? Ling Shi asked. Upstairs, the Empress replied as she pointed up. Huh? Then why isn't Dad coming down? Ling Shi asked in confusion. In the Ling clan, it was definitely Ling Han who doted on her the most. Now that they hadn't seen each other for so long, he was actually remaining seated upstairs. He's a bit angry right now, the Empress replied with a smile. Ling Shi felt even more confused. Angry? Angry about what? Was there anything to be angry about? She hurriedly ran upstairs, saying, I'm going to see Dad first. She had no time to care about her companion. The young man bowed and said, Greetings, Auntie. I'm Hao Jing. He appeared neither haughty nor humble. He either was an extremely proud person, or he had an extremely powerful background. Otherwise, how would he dare to act so casually before a first-tier, heavenly venerate as a pseudo-heavenly venerate? The Empress made no reply. Apart from Ling Han and her daughter, everyone else was worthless in her eyes. Hao Jing couldn't help but feel slightly awkward after being given the cold shoulder. He could only raise his hand to rub his nose. Upstairs, Ling Shi immediately saw the sitting Ling Han after entering the room. However, his eyes were tightly shut, and it was as if he were sleeping. She walked over and called softly, Dad? Ling Han ignored her. Only after Ling Shi called him a few more times did he finally open his eyes, saying, It's been so long, yet you didn't come back to visit. Shia returned once. However, Ling City already didn't exist, Ling Shi said. But I know just how capable Dad is, so I knew that there definitely wouldn't be any dangers. Of course, your dad Ling Han was just about to brag. However, he immediately stopped himself, knowing that he couldn't let his daughter change the topic. He cleared his throat and asked, Who's that brat outside? Ling Shi came to a sudden realization. No wonder her dad was feeling angry. It was all because of jealousy. She couldn't help but find this funny. He's just a senior from the Martial Academy. We coincidentally traveled to the ruins together to search for treasures. He's called Hao Jing. Hao Jing. Good times don't last long, one? Ling Han shook his head, musing, What a crappy name. Ling Shi was rendered speechless. Ling Han disliked him so much that even his name needed to be made fun of? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.